Testing, testing.
not in accordance with the typical constitutional processes. And the state of Florida is going to respond. And due to that, the OSHA rule, as soon as it's published, the state of Florida will be joining with Georgia and Alabama, as well as trying to plaintiffs to file suit. This is a rule that is not consistent with the Constitution and is not legally authorized.
Testing.
Congressional statutes. There is no federal.
Call to order, please. Will everyone rise for the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Have a reading of the Sunshine Law, please.
Notice of this meeting was published in accordance to the Open Public Meetings Act.
Okay, our normal announcement, there will be no new business taken after 11 p.m. May I have a roll call, please?
Mayor Gilmore.
Here.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Here.
Mrs. Kelly, absent. Mr. McKay.
Here.
Mr. Tricoci, absent. Mrs. Baggio.
Here.
Mrs. Tyndale.
Here.
Ms. Costco.
Here.
Mr. Krollpfeifer.
Here.
Mr. Bradley.
Here.
Mr. Murphy, absent. Mrs. Conguglio, absent. And Mr. Silk, absent.
Do we have a quorum?
Yes, sir.
Okay, items for business. The first one is case 21-09, Philadelphia Hardware Group. Councilor McAndrew, the floor is yours.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Pat McAndrew, representing the applicant. With me is Kevin O'Keefe, who is a principal in the applicant. By way of introduction, what we're proposing, we have 3 C boxes behind our industrial building off Mary Way, and it's really the backyard of 2 or 3 industrial buildings. There's one next door that backs up to our area, and then there's Bruni Plaza, Bruni Square up front, which backs up to us. And what we'd like to do is have these 3 containers really on a short-term basis for storage for roughly a year. Mr. O'Keefe will be my only witness, and what I'd like to do is get him sworn in, please.
Sir, raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you give tonight will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but true stuff you got?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay. Kevin, first tell us who you are and what your position is with.
Oh, yeah. Can you hold on just
Mr.
one
McAndrew.
second, please?
Sure.
I think you folks have to, Mr. McLaughlin, use variance?
Is it? Okay, yeah, I'm right, I'm looking at that. We
Yep.
gotta go.
Sorry.
That's okay.
We still have a quorum, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Do we have 5
I
minutes?
have 5.
Okay.
6, I'm sorry. I keep forgetting to count you because you're right there.
Over here.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Just wanted to get that taken care of. For the benefit of folks in the audience, the members of the Township Committee have to recuse themselves because it's a use variance.
Kevin, you were going to tell us who you are and
Okay,
your position?
sure. Kevin O'Keefe, I'm the president and one of the owners of Philadelphia Hardware Group. We also go under Liberty Building Products. And let me explain the situation.
Yeah, explain the situation,
Okay.
like why you need these 3
Sure.
containers.
Sure. So with COVID happening, overseas deliveries has gone out from what used to take probably 60 days to 90 days is now out close to 180 days. So what effect that has on the business is our inventory doubles in a building that wasn't really set up to do that much inventory. So we needed some extra space for the sea containers. In the meantime, we've just signed an LOI to move 2 buildings down to have double the space. And we just need some time to be able to hold the inventory so we can supply customers and, make the move, and then we'll sell the sea containers at that point.
So the game plan is you're going to move 2 buildings down, go from 10,000 square feet to 20,000 square feet.
Yes,
The containers will go.
that.
So then what you're looking for is this temporary relief, roughly a year or less than a year.
Yeah, hopefully less than a year, but, sometimes lease stuff takes longer and they have to build an office, so it may take, a few months, and if it goes a little longer, I'm concerned about having a quick temporary situation, because then we'll be back here saying we need a couple more months. I'd rather ask for a little longer and then hopefully
Be less.
3 to 6 months, have them out of there.
Now, when the board considers this kind of relief, even though it's temporary, let's look at negative impacts. Can you describe the setting for these containers and whether it impacts the properties around you?
Yeah, so we're kind of in the beginning or the end, however you want to look at it, of the industrial complex. And we're the first building in that area, and it's kind of tucked in, right, 3 sea containers right next to each other, and there's actually an embankments around 2 sides of it in our building. It really, I can't see it. It's not a site issue. People aren't driving by. You have to come all the way around, and it's a dead end. It's really just kind of on its own.
And the buildings around you, one's an industrial building and the other is a commercial building. They all back up to you.
Yes.
So
Yep.
it's like the rear yard of 3 buildings.
Yes.
And the way you describe it, it's kind of in a bowl, so it's a little bit out of sight.
Yes.
Does the board have any questions about the proposal and the temporary nature of it?
Mr. McAndrew, maybe you could address not so much the Alimo letter, but the Taylor Design Group letter of June 28, 2021. And then more specifically, the general comments at page 2 and 3.
Well, I think some of the letter was focusing on the length of time it would be there. So I think the fact that it'll be temporary resolves some of these issues. One question is discuss the ongoing permanent nature of the proposal, and it's not designed to be permanent. And because of that, we're not proposing a replacement building. As far as landscaping, you know, if the board planner wants to do a site inspection and do some infill landscaping, you know, that's fine.
I guess the other thing, and take a look at the photo on page 3 of the Taylor Design letter. And I guess the concern, I'll generalize it to be clutter on the site. Clutter from miscellaneous containers, dumpsters, pallets, and whether this amounts to just more clutter on the site. So I guess the suggestion is clean up the clutter.
Yeah, part of that is, we have a small dumpster and we have the 3 C boxes, but we're only 1 tenant in the building. Some of this is other tenants. Can you address that, Kevin?
Yeah, so one of the containers, the first one you see on the left isn't ours. After talking to the township, we did clean up a lot of the pallets and things, stacked them, and tried to address all the issues other than the C-box thing, which we were coming, you know, to this meeting for.
All right, so the boxes in the photo we're talking about in the Taylor letter, they're not your boxes, they're...
No, those are ours. Yeah.
Those are yours?
Yeah, so it's not any additions to that, those are the boxes.
Okay, so that's where they'd stay.
Yes, absolutely, and that's all in the corner, basically in the end of a parking lot with the trees and everything there. Seemed like the right place to put it out of the way.
Are the items to the right of the C boxes yours?
So depending on the day, so sometimes, you know, what we do on a nice day is bring stuff out of the warehouse, so there's more room to, you know, maneuver, because there is some cutting and some light manufacturing done, and then a lot of the stuff goes back in. If it's plastic, sometimes it'll sit there because it's not as, you know, it doesn't break down outside, but any of the wood goes back in and back in the racks. We're just short on space right now because of the doubling of inventory, so.
Can any of these items be put in the C boxes?
So the C boxes right now, depending on the shipments going in and out, are filled. So like we just received a container so that we would fill it up, and then over the next 3 months, we ship them out.
Yeah.
You know, so then they empty out, and we just it's kind of like an ebb and flow
Okay.
on things.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, I have a couple of questions, but it's going to sound like a little bit redundant for what Mr. McKay just asked you, but I have to disclose, I was at the site, I did visit and everything, and I was confused with the application. You're asking for the boxes, additional storage via 3 C boxes.
Right.
And when I was there a couple of weeks ago, the boxes are already there. So are you looking for 6 or just 3?
Just 3.
The
Yeah.
3 that are, the 3 that are there?
3 out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was my error. I didn't realize at the time that you weren't supposed to put the C boxes there. It was in an area that I thought we were okay to put things, and then when the township came by and looked at it,
We have a long-standing policy that anybody that does something like that, you have to buy drinks for all. It's an old rule I just made up. Okay, so were there any violations issued on this that stimulated the putting in the application?
There were notices sent out. I will have to say that I spoke to the tenant extensively. I also spoke to the previous owners of this site. How this was found out is when I was doing their business license, as I normally find many of these things. They have been cooperative. The unfortunate part is that the back of this building, the majority of the issues are not theirs. Some of the other tenants have been cited. I now have to get the new owners of the industrial park on board with their tenants because of issues that are outstanding there. But these 3 were there, and that's why he is here today.
Okay. I know I had another question and it just flew by. Does anybody else have any questions?
I have a question for the applicant, if you don't mind.
Sure.
You say you're in 3 Mary Way. What unit are you moving into? What building?
So 7 Mary Way is becoming open because ABC Supply that's in there is taking the whole building we're in. So we're kind of swapping with them.
Okay.
They're taking the whole building. We only had a portion of the building we're in, and we're moving into where they were, which is 20,000 feet.
Do we have an anticipated date when this is all to occur?
So theoretically, March, April, the LOI says February, March right now, but they're already saying March, April. So I'm just a little concerned that things get pushed because they have to build an office for us. It's a open 20,000 square foot warehouse, and we need about 2,000 feet of office space there, which is what we currently have. So that's going to take a couple months, and the way things are with materials and things, I'm just concerned that it may bump, a couple months, and I'd, rather be safe
The
than
reason why I'm
sorry.
asking about the date is it affects many of us in my enforcement office. Myself, my fire official, our business licenses all have to be changed. So I'm trying to get an idea of when to be able to get an idea of when you guys are going to be moving around. Because it's important to come see it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I know there's I met with the landlord last week, and they're shooting for April. That's his plan right now. And I know there's probably licenses and things that they have to do.
Yeah, there'll be a lot going on with
Yeah.
that change, yes.
Actually, the reason we asked for up to a year to get out of this space is because we have to sell the containers, we have to get permits and things for the new space, and things it was going to take a little more time than you planned.
Okay.
So we just wanted to have enough time to make sure we were okay.
I just thought of my question was, will you be taking these C boxes with you from number 5 to number 7?
So the goal would be to sell them once we move everything into the space. And we bought them just for temp storage. So we hadn't really got that far, but I guess, that would probably some time. They're not small, so I'm concerned about just having a little time to sell them. Once we move into the space, we're going to have empty C boxes, right? And then once they're empty, we can sell them, and they are in demand right now, so that's good.
Can the C boxes go into Building 7? Is there an opening big enough to move them inside after you move?
There's a possibility of that. We haven't laid out our warehouse and our racking, we're working on that now.
Okay.
I don't know, that's a question. I would, I guess my first thought would be I'd like to look at it because we're getting more space because we need more space. We put the C boxes in there, we probably are going to be a little tight, and back in the same kind of situation.
Yeah, I think.
So I'm kind of,
Yeah, but the question really is, are you
Right.
going to put these C boxes behind the new space outside? And the answer is no, I think.
no, the idea is not to have them. They're not going to be there. We would sell them from the spots they're in. We try not to move them.
Okay,
You know, we can fork everything else over to the new building because it's pretty close.
okay. Any questions or comments from our professionals?
Just a couple to clarify. I don't know if it was Mr. McAndrew or Mr. O'Keefe. You indicated that there's another storage trailer or storage office out there, and that's one of the other tenants that's in your building now, or in that same building?
Yeah, so the 3C boxes are ours, and then there's some other containers. You know, there's some different tenants, so every tenant kind of has their own garbage container, you know, and then some people recycle. But there are some other things people has nothing to do with us, but there's like a boat and cars, and there's other stuff there has anything to do with us.
This
And
is
so,
an ongoing problem.
right, and that's why I want to try to make sure we sort of focus your thing on you, and,
Yeah.
but you guys indicated that ABC is going to move in and take this entire
Yes,
building?
that problem's going to go away because you know, the tenants that are in there now are not going to be in there in the future. ABC will have that whole building, so right now, there's 4 tenants, including us, in that building. I think that's correct. Yeah, there's Victor Robbins, us. Yes, and 2 others. So it'll be 1 tenant ABC in that building, and then we're going to be,
So in 12 months, when you're hopefully in your new building and an inspection gets done out here, there won't be anything
there'll be no C box.
out here?
Yes.
No C boxes or even those other,
Those tenants will be gone, and I know what's going on there, and that stuff is the other tenants who won't be there.
so let me ask another question. Are you hoping that it's 6 or 9, but you're asking for 12?
I'm hoping we stick to the goal, which is what the landlord had said, of April. So that would be 3 or 4 months.
Okay.
Right, and then I'm thinking a little time, you know, let's say a month or 60 days to sell the C boxes. So hopefully I wrap it all up in about 6 months. But, you know, if the office takes longer to build, or if there's permit issues or different things going back and forth, and it extends, you know, I wouldn't want to be bumping up on the time frame.
And I think as long as some of those other items and whether that's the owner or landlord or whoever's issue that is, that none of those parking spaces are striped as shown on the plan. There is no handicap accessible parking. There's a handful of sort of things that we identify.
Yeah,
And you agree to comply with those as a.
Yeah, we would, yeah,
approval.
absolutely.
That was all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Just on the same subject, would it be all right if, like, let's say we approve this through June 30th, let's say, but you can come back to Mrs. Newcomb for an extension and avoid coming into here? Is that okay with you, Mrs. Newcomb?
Yeah, I just would like to see that in the resolution.
You what?
In the resolution.
Yeah, that's what I'm-
Approve it to that time frame to be in there.
That's what I'm saying. And the maximum would be, let's say,
Yeah.
December 31st.
Sure,
I'm
Okay.
with that.
yeah,
Mr. Miller?
that'd be great.
Speaking of the site it by itself, right now, we don't have a site plan that's in compliance with the existing conditions. So I'm not sure how we're going to get a compliant site plan if this goes to a new tenant and he doesn't, and he's within all of the zoning requirements. He doesn't have, I don't know how he has to do a new site plan of the thing. So I don't know how we get to that position.
So, Mr. Chairman, what Mr. Miller is speaking about is the previous owners of this site had come to us, and maybe we may remember, probably a good 3 to 4, if not 5 years ago, in regards to redoing many of the buildings, the front, redoing the parking lot, striping, trash container enclosures, things such as that. At this point, they have never finalized the site plan out. And this was a discussion that I had, is that the site is, the whole entire site, not just building 3, but is not in compliance at all. They've never finalized out anything, and now we have a new set of owners. So I believe where Mr. Miller is going, which I agree with him, is that we have a tenant here who's looking to try and do things right. And now we have tenants switching buildings and going into different sites. And we still don't have compliance for the whole site itself from the new owners now. And I really think that that's something that should be brought into the thought process if this were to be approved today, having the rest of the site completed, because it's building 3, building 5, building 6, it's the whole thing. And I believe, is that correct, Mr. Miller, where you're going with this?
Yeah, but like you said, I don't have, as I think it was buildings 2 and 3, like where the potato chip people are and the gym and all that. At least there was a plan there for that. There was no plan for this building. I haven't seen any, a completed plan.
So my feeling is that if this were to be approved, we certainly can deal directly with this issue here. And I think then it would be my job to follow up with the new owners in regards to what is still outstanding on the rest of the site.
Given the swapping of building tenants, is that I pose this as a question, would that be a sufficient change in use to trigger the requirements for a site plan?
Any change of use can trigger a site plan, yes, because there's different requirements for each type of use.
So that's where it comes in that I require all the businesses, and it's imperative that the owners of these properties understand that when their tenants change units, that they are to notify us, because again, I'm not the only one affected. There's affected a lot of things, especially when they start going, their use starts going to much larger buildings. That truly affects the fire official. Then it gets into the point where now I got to take a look, are you bringing more trucks in, or are you bringing more employees in? So it does have an effect.
But the change of tenancy is somewhat different than the overall site plan for the center that was never followed up on or perfected by the owner.
Right.
So this should sort of live and die on its own, and the overall site plan
I agree.
should be handled as a site plan enforcement violation issue to bring them either back or do what those conditions of the prior site plan approval were.
I agree. I think this is a sole issue. I don't think the tenant should have to pay the price for what the landowners are not doing. If they decide to approve it, yes, then we'll look at his solely, and then I'll go back to the new owners now, because they exchanged hands, several months ago.
All right, just to follow up that point then, where are we then with the issues of cleaning up the clutter, the temporary office, the parking stalls, those things under D in Taylor Design's letter? Are we going to impose those requirements on this applicant, this tenant, or leave that to the larger site plan
Yes, I
enforcement
would agree
issue?
with that.
Since the tenant's not going to be there in 4 months or maybe 6 months.
Bless you. Bless you.
Again, many of these issues are not
Thank you.
the applicants, they are the other 2 existing 2 or 3 tenants, which I am constantly having them clean up. It's a cat and mouse game what it comes out to be.
Right. Well, I'm not suggesting that this applicant clean up others' mess, but just deal with his own mess, if there is, and his own three boxes. So locate them, put them down. Any garbage that he has, do the right thing with, time limited.
Correct.
And maybe that could happen, and maybe the way to sort of facilitate this and create that distinction is, or November now, that by December 15 or December 31, once a resolution might be memorialized, we conduct a site visit, and that way you can basically be able to say to me and or Marty or Kathy, these are our 3 C boxes, these are our 2 trash dumpsters. All of this stuff is theirs. Then Kathy has sort of a starting point, and we know that you've cleaned up all of your things and anything else is part of their violation. And then you've cleaned up those items, and those, have it be at a time when any of the stuff that you move out during the day has been moved back in. So literally your site is, and that'll sort of give Kathy a baseline to be able to go back to those other folks. And the board knows that you've cleaned up all your stuff except for the C boxes and the dumpsters.
Okay, that's fine by me. That makes sense.
And the new location, I assume, will have the handicap parking spaces properly, which was mentioned in Mr. Taylor's letter? You don't have them at 3.
Yeah, right. There is
sense.
now that you say it, it didn't dawn on me until you just said that, because I actually drove there today just to kind of look at, some of the changes we're making. The front of that building looks better than most of the buildings in that area. They must have redone the parking lot there at some point. I don't know the history on it, but we're moving into 7. That area seems a lot.
Well, the uses
Tighter.
in there don't tend to be as heavy as some of the other buildings.
Right.
I think in the other cases, like hers and the sports facility, the owner came in like building by building.
Okay.
Because we were here in the past, at least twice I can remember. And I think with this building that we vacate and when we're going to, if there's a fit up required, you can always say, well, you have to come in for zoning permits and approvals. So I think that's how it was done in the past and probably will be done in the future.
You're correct.
Yeah.
And I think the town can withhold a change of tenant permit if the conditions of the prior site plan approval aren't perfected and they don't have their accessible parking and any of those other improvements, and that will get the owner to show up pretty quickly as well.
Which would affect this applicant and ABC.
Right, on their next site for their building swap, so.
That's how you reeled them in the past.
Well, I'm going to have to set up a meeting with him to have him come in and speak with me.
Will this applicant have to come back in again to move into the other building, or are we taking care of it all at one point?
The use, he's going to a bigger space, but the use is permitted through the entire site.
Right.
So that doesn't come into play in regards to, now, if he decided, he's telling me he's going to bring 20 tractor trailers in there, then that's going to be a different issue.
And the only distinction would be if any of the improvements that were supposed to have happened on that building have not in fact been implemented, then they would need to be done before you guys go in. So you guys may want to do that as part of your own due diligence.
Yes.
And you guys may want to reach out to the owner and sort of bring them to the table from both sides.
Right. Okay. The new
That way
ones
you're
I've
not held
dealt
up.
with they seem reasonable. I don't know if.
I've not met them yet,
Okay.
but I will soon.
Yeah.
We'll warn them about that, okay?
Right.
Any other comments from our professionals or board members? If not, I'll open it to public comment. Do we have anybody that would like to speak regarding this application? Seeing no hands, how about, can they hear me on, we have people who've called in, so.
Okay.
Can they hear what I said? Do they have any
You can,
questions?
that disc is your microphone.
Yeah, I know. I thought I said it loud enough. Any other comments from the people who have called in or dialed in for this? Okay, hearing none, I'll close the public comment. Turn it back to the board. What's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to grant the application for the use variance.
Okay, do we have a second?
The conditions would be the allowance of the 3 boxes placed by agreement with our planner, and the resolution of any of this applicant's other other business property on the site in terms of organizing it or clearing it. Again, in consultation with and under the approval of our planner. And the time limit, Mr. Chairman?
I think, well, I suggested June 30th, but then Mrs. Newcomb can extend it at their request, so they don't have to come back into the board again.
Correct. What I can do is if we put a time frame on there, let's say June 30th, and obviously it's not a year, they need to get back to me, and vice versa, if I don't hear from them, and then I can do an administrative update to the board and let you know what's going on. And then if you feel the applicant needs to come back for some reason, otherwise the administrative approval will be enough.
Just routine, okay.
For how
All
long?
right, so my motion would be a June 30 deadline with the ability to get 2 60-day extensions upon application, at least 2 weeks prior to the deadline to the town, seeking the extension, and it will be within the sound discretion, under the motion, the sound discretion of the town officials as to whether to grant the extensions for good cause.
That'd be great.
Mr. McKay, does that also include an inspection by December 31st of this year?
No, it doesn't, but it does now. It didn't, but it does now. Got that, Mr. King? So that gives you almost your year, but it also keeps you on a leash, so you got to go back and talk to us if you need more time.
Yes, that should work. Hopefully, we stay on schedule for April and have to have an extension. That's the goal.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just for clarity purposes, Mr. Kingsbury, do you want to read back what you're going to be preparing
Sure.
before we get a second?
The motion was to approve a use variance for 3 boxes to be placed in, as recommended by the planner, that the, trying to control reading my writing. That there will be a cleanup of his property on the site. The boxes will be allowed to be there until June 30, 2022. If they need an extension, they can request that of Kathy Newcomb. They would have to apply to that 2 days before the expiration of that date.
14 days.
2 weeks. Yeah, 2 weeks.
2 weeks, so
2 weeks, I'm sorry.
So Kathy Newcomb has time to deal with it.
2 weeks. She would have the authority to grant 2 60-day extensions or refer the matter back to the board. And there will be an inspection of the site by December 30, 2021.
Okay. Do we have a second on that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, any questions on the motion? May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Mrs. Tyndale?
Yes.
Mr. Bradley?
Yes.
Mrs. Baggio?
Yes.
Ms. Cosko?
Yes.
And Mr. Kroll-Pfeiffer?
Yes. Good luck with it.
Thank you very
I'm
much.
glad your business is expanding.
Thank you for the help. I really appreciate it.
Worries. Okay, thank you, Mr. McAndrew.
Give 1 second, Wendy.
Okay. Yes. And one of them, this big packet, that one.
Yeah.
That's being put off. Yeah. Just, we're gonna do the plan, first floor, which is 2105. 2105A is being held off.
Right.
That's so funny. Person has COVID. But yeah, otherwise, first teacher, she gave us some time, so she wouldn't. For them to do it.
Long to contain.
Whatever.
Okay, we all set, ladies?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, the next case is 21-05. It's Blue Water, the Mine Highway redevelopment at the bypass, and half a dozen other names, which we'll get explanation on. Councilor Floyd?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Michael Floyd. I'm an attorney with Archer & Griner, appearing on behalf of the applicant, Blue Water Property Group LLC, which has submitted an application for preliminary and final major subdivision approval for property located at the intersection of Marne Highway and the Mount Holly bypass, and identified as Block 24, lots 4.01, 11, 12.01, 12.02, 12.03, 12.04, and 12.05 on the township's official tax maps. The property has an address of 710 Marne Highway, and the property is governed by and is consistent with the Marne Highway redevelopment plan. The applicant this evening is not seeking any variances with this application. It is a by right site plan application. With me this evening, we do have three witnesses. We have, on behalf of the applicant, Michael Coppola, a partner with Blue Water Property Group. We have Richard Burrow, a licensed professional engineer with his lead AP designation, Executive Vice President of Langen Engineering and Environmental Services. And last but not least, we have Zach Wester, a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey, and a project manager with M&H Architects. And we are in receipt of the technical review letters issued by Alimo Engineering, Taylor Design Group. We also submitted point-by-point response letters to those first two review letters. And our goal this evening with our presentation, our testimony, and our exhibits will be to hopefully answer all those comments and questions in the review letters. One last housekeeping matter, we do have 7 exhibits that we plan to reference this evening. Exhibit A1 will be an aerial photograph of the property and the surrounding uses. Exhibit A2 will be a zoomed-in aerial photograph of the property. Exhibit A3 will be a rendered site plan. Exhibit A4 will be the conceptual floor plan. Exhibit A5 will be the conceptual elevations. And exhibits A6 and A7 will be rendered perspectives of the building corner and from the Marne Highway perspective. And what is proposed with this application is the construction of a 149,510 square foot warehouse distribution facility, along with related site improvements, including 131 parking spaces, 29 loading berths, 39 trailer stalls, and related site improvements. But if there's no questions at this time, what I'd like first to have is Michael Coppola come up, introduce himself, and talk about Blue Water Property Group, the nature of this development, it is speculative in nature, and talk about the project.
Okay, what about, just to save some time, have your 3 witnesses come up and be sworn in, and then we'll voir dire your professionals and move on from there, okay?
Yes, I would ask Michael Coppola, Richard Burrow, and Zach Wester to come up.
Before we swear them in, can we just make an announcement that all the exhibits are online? If they go to the township website and to the land use board page, they can find those exhibits.
Okay. So noted.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you give tonight will be the truthful truth and the truth, so help you God?
So I just, one of your witnesses, all are now under oath, but maybe one of them, just as a little footnote, can answer a question, hopefully, that I had. Do they know when the creosote manufacturing plant ceased operation?
So actually, that will be the subject of the next application. This application is for Blue Water Property Group. I think you're referring to the application for Black Creek Group.
All right, so your property doesn't include any of that. It's the other side of the Conrail tracks.
That is correct.
Okay, sorry.
It's a little confusing because we have 5 Creek and Blue Water.
I've seen, I looked at so many
And
diagrams. on
and
that.
Seagull.
Seagull, correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
And,
All right.
Mr. Chairman, for our witnesses, we have them qualified prior to their testimony or do it at this point.
Let's do it now.
Thank you. After Richard Burrow, if you can come up to the podium, please. Just state your name for the record again and your licenses, education, and experience.
Good evening, Richard Burrow, BURROW with Langen Engineering and Environmental Services. I'm a civil engineer with 28 years experience. I have a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from the University of Glasgow in Scotland. I've been practicing civil engineering here in New Jersey for 22 years. I've testified in front of many boards, but this would be my first time in Hainesport, and I am a licensed professional engineer with the current license here in the state of New Jersey.
Okay. Unless the board has any objections, acceptable.
Thank you. Zach, you put the same credentials on the record, please.
My name is Zach Wester. It's Wester. I'm a project manager with M&H Architects, and I have been with M&H for 11 years. I have a Master's of Architecture from Kansas State University. I'm a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey. I've worked on approximately 10 million square feet of industrial projects in the state of New Jersey and about another 25 million nationally. And I've recently testified in several other townships in the state, but have yet to testify to this board.
Any objections from anybody on the board? If not, it's acceptable.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Well, Mike, you've had a chance to review the technical review letters issued by Limo Engineers and Taylor Design Group, correct?
Correct.
So I guess just to start, can you talk about your experience with Blue Water Property Group and Blue Water's experience with industrial development?
Sure, and good evening, and thank you for your time. It's a pleasure to be before this board again. My name is Mike Capola. I'm a partner with Blue Water Property Group. I know some of you, or all of you, may be familiar with us based on our previous appearance before this board and subsequent construction of the Hainesport Commerce Center. However, I did want to take a minute just to provide a quick overview. Blue Water is an experienced industrial developer with a long history in the state of New Jersey. Between Blue Water and our predecessor companies, we've developed approximately 7 million square feet in the state of New Jersey and 35 million square feet across the country. The design of the subject property tonight's hearing is reflective of this experience and our understanding of tenant needs in modern distribution buildings. This is a speculative development, so we're not able to provide specifics as to the operations that will ultimately be located at the property. But based on our 20-plus years of experience in the sector, we certainly can convey what is typical for this type of building. Further, we have designed the facility to maximize efficiency and long-term operational viability with no variances from the Marne Highway redevelopment plan. We anticipate this to be a single-tenant asset, but the design provides for flexibility to have as many as 2 tenants in the building with dedicated parking along the front and either end of the building and ample trailer parking along the entire length of the truck court. The plans you have in front of you show an approximately 10% office build-out, which reflects the upper end of the range we would expect. We would typically expect a building like this to be more in the 5 to 7%, but we've shown the upper end of the anticipated office build-out range. Number of employees will vary by user type and operation, but for a facility of this size, we typically see between 100 and 125 full-time employees across 2 to 3 shifts. There will likely be some limited amount of additional visitor and part-time employee traffic. These operations are typically 24 hours, but for a building of this size, we anticipate very little overnight trucking activity as reflected in our traffic report. Shift volumes can have some seasonal fluctuation, and typical shift hours range from 8 to 12 depending on the tenant's operations. In terms of the types of operations that would be located at the subject property, this is what we would consider more traditional storage warehousing, where product will come in on containerized pallets, be broken down from there and placed on racking, and ultimately orders are fulfilled either direct to consumer or to retail locations. Given the population density in the surrounding area, this could be a direct-to-consumer operation, but would lend itself to product that has a much lower turnover rate. Think bulky appliances, furniture, home improvement, that type of thing. The project conforms to current codes designed to minimize or eliminate noise, glare, odor, safety hazards, and air and water pollution. Trash and recycling collection will be handled by third-party haulers contracting directly with the end user. Most tenants require a single trash compactor in one of the dock positions as shown on our plan, and the recycling is typically sorted and stored internal to the building and then handled by a private cleaning company or recycler. Ample parking for employees and guests are provided on the plan in either a single tenant or two-tenant lease-up, and 39 trailer spots are provided on the plan, which is used for short-term parking and storage with typical trailer turnaround times of 24 to 48 hours for most operations. I just wanted to end by thanking the board's professionals and representatives of the township for what's been a collaborative process from the development of the redevelopment plan through the review of the site plan. We truly appreciate the time that's gone into providing feedback, and I'm happy to answer any questions now or as they arise during testimony.
Thank you, Mike.
Just in terms of the traditional storage use comment that you made, just to clarify, so this is going to be in sort of plain language, just a dry storage facility, appliances or packaged goods or whatever, no manufacturing going on here?
That's our expectation.
And no processing of any materials?
That's our expectation. The redevelopment plan does contemplate kind of end processing, finished processing, and has different parking standards for the different uses that could be in the building, but we would expect that to be a small portion of an operation, not the entire building itself, if anything.
Right. Any anticipated chemical storage?
No.
Or petroleum storage?
No.
Other than what you need to run machines?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Are you going to introduce exhibits with your other professionals? Okay. Do you want to go forward with that, and we'll hold questions?
I'll have Richard Burrow come up, our engineer. And Richard, if we could start with Exhibit A1. This is the aerial photograph of the property and the surrounding uses. Can you just orient the board to the property and the road network and the surrounding uses, please?
Certainly. Good evening, Richard Burrow again. So this is an aerial exhibit that shows the property highlighted in yellow, 10-acre parcel and multiple lots that have already been stated. Our boundaries are two county roads, Northern Highway to the north and Mount Holly Bypass to the east. We have the Christian Faith Assembly to the west and the railroad tracks to the south. Route 38 is just further down Northern Highway to the south on the exhibit here. So I'll go down to exhibit A2. A2 is another aerial photograph. It is really just focused on the site, again 10 acres, and round in yellow. You can see the site's two houses and a barn on it today. There's a limited number of trees, and most of the site is empty with grass on it. It's a relatively flat site, and really not much else to it, to be honest.
Could you go back to the first exhibit and explain who your neighbors are?
So
North of you is residential, I believe, right?
north is residential, to the east is the cemetery, to the south the railroad track, Americycle and Cox Industries, and to the west the Christian Faith Assembly.
It's what?
The church.
Okay. I mean, I know what's there, but I wanted everybody else to know what's there. I've been there.
And a question for Mr. McKay earlier about the creosote site. That is directly south on the Atlantic Woods.
Yeah, I was bollocksed up in terms of the site.
That's that.
Okay.
I still
All
want
right.
my question answered, but not by you.
I don't know the answer, I'm afraid.
Okay, you could go back to Exhibit 2 or proceed to 3.
Sure, I'll go to 3.
Thank you.
So, let me mark Exhibit A3, which illustrates the proposal we're seeking approval for this evening. So this is a proposed 149,471 square foot warehouse on this 10-acre parcel. 131 car parking spaces, 29 loading spaces, and 39 trailer parking spaces. It complies with all of the requirements of the redevelopment plan. The setbacks, the buffers, the building coverage, the lot coverage, every bulk standard in the redevelopment plan is designed is in compliance with. The redevelopment plan and the use as well, warehouses are permitted use. The redevelopment did contemplate, a specific design that was very similar to this, and Mr. Taylor has asked me to comment on the differences between the concept design in the redevelopment plan and this one, so I'll do that. But for most points, it's very, very similar. If you go to, I think it's page 14 of the redevelopment plan, you'll see a figure that looks very like this. So one of the differences is the number of stormwater basins, and the concept design was contemplated in late 2020. The state since then has adopted new stormwater rules in March of this year, and we've done some extensive testing on site to verify the existing soil conditions. That's caused us to go from 4 stormwater management basins to 5, the additional basin being Basin 5 on the corner of the Mount Hall bypass and Marne Highway. Really, the new rules contemplate that you have a larger number of basins close to the source, and if you think about it, we have a large amount of pavement in the back, so we have more basins here, we have some pavement in the front, basin there, but we didn't have anything on the corner, which caused us to have to put Basin 5 in to comply with the new stormwater rules. It was a sidewalk from the signal at Marne Highway and Mount Holly bypass directly to the building. Because we're building a basin on that direct route, the sidewalk comes along Marne Highway, then makes a straight turn into the proposed office area. That's another subtle difference. The Basin 2 was originally shown just with slopes on all sides. When we did slopes on all sides, that doesn't provide sufficient bottom surface area for the stormwater to filter into the ground. So we have a wall that's about 7 feet high just on Basin 2, approximately 80 feet long in the direction of Marne Highway, and about 20 feet long back out to the road. So it's a small wall, and I don't think it's a significant wall. I don't think it changes the context of the design, in my opinion.
What's the construction material on the wall?
The wall is expected to be a modular block wall.
Okay.
Some of the other similarities or differences, we had contemplated a screen wall facing Marne Highway. We anticipated a need to screen from the residences you mentioned, from a visual perspective and from a sound perspective. In developing the design, we worked with a sound expert, Ostergaard Associates, and Ostergaard studied this in more detail than we did in the concept. So the wall, sound barrier wall facing Marne Highway is 20 feet high. It's a flywall wall, which is a proprietary product that absorbs sound, and we have often used in this circumstance next to a warehouse building. It's an appropriate product, in my opinion.
How is that, what's the durability of that with weather, wind?
It is as durable as the building is.
Okay.
The slight difference to the wall, so the wall height really wasn't specified. The one illustrated in the redevelopment plan, I think it was 13 feet high. This wall that's properly designed is 20 feet high. The wall also has a sliding gate, so at night time when the facility is not in use, the gate will be closed, providing a visual and audio barrier.
Same material for the gate?
Correct. All one uniform surface.
Terrible name, by the way. It sounds like it's a plywood. And I know it's not plywood, but...
I did not name it. The wall also extends now down about half of the truck court at a lower height of 10 feet. Again, this wall was designed in collaboration with a sound expert. It meets the state sound requirements with respect to the current circumstances that surround the site. The rest of the truck court is fenced with an 8 feet high chain link fence. That fence is also in compliance with the redevelopment plan.
I wasn't sure, I couldn't follow on the plans because they were small, the ones I've got, and I didn't have them on the computer. So I couldn't exactly figure out where the chain link fence went. Can you show us?
Certainly. chain link fence starts on the southwest corner of the building, crosses across the access road. There'll be a gate here that'll have a Knox box in case it's locked when there's emergency access needed. That then follows the edge of the pavement and then to the back southwest corner of the truck court. And it goes approximately halfway up the truck court. Then it connects to the 10-foot tall plywood stone wall.
Now, why doesn't the plywood, I keep saying plywood, but why doesn't the sound wall run the whole length of the building, all the way to the Conrail tracks?
Sure. The receptors for sound are the church next door and the houses across the street. The railroad tracks and the property to the south are not receptors for sound. So there is no need to screen for sound here. There is a need to screen for sound to the west and to the north.
And by not putting a sound barrier along that whole trailer park line, you're not allowing sort of leakage of sound around it?
So sound will go in this direction to the south, yes. But the sound is not, there's nothing to screen against in that direction.
Mr. McKay, if I could just, one factual matter. So the sound wall has been designed to comply with the applicable DEP requirements for the maximum daytime and nighttime decibel levels. But I think more importantly, we are aware that the Joint Land Use Board granted use variance approval and preliminary site plan approval for a potential residential project on
I was getting to that.
on the church property. And I can state for the record that the applicant, we have been in negotiations with the township solicitor, John Gillespie, regarding the redevelopment agreement. And I could state for the record that there will be a provision in the redevelopment agreement regarding the potential future expansion of that sound wall should that residential development come to fruition in the future. And that will be an obligation on the redeveloper.
Okay.
So I have a quick question. So you mentioned that I'm going to, for lack of better direction, what we're looking at the lower right-hand corner of the building. You mentioned there was going to be a chain link fence there with a gate, okay? Can you explain to us how the traffic's going to flow in and out of here real quick, or is this going to be done at a later time?
No, do it anytime.
So, give us, like, I'm coming from here and I'm getting in there, like, give us a few scenarios of how the truck's going to come in.
Let me try and do that. So if you're coming from the south from Route 38, you come up the Mount Holly bypass, and there's the median barrier here, so you can't make a left in our driveway to the bypass. You need to make a left at the intersection, and then we've added a left turn lane on Marne Highway, so you would turn into our entrance on Marne Highway. Right. The entrance on Marne Highway is the primary entrance. That's where most of the traffic will come and go from, because it's a full movement driveway and provides easy access to the truck courts and to the car parking areas. The traffic coming from the west would come along Marne Highway, make a right into the facility. You can see that we've provided some widening along the frontage, allows for a little bit of deceleration to turn into the site, and just a continuation of the right turn lane onto the Mount Holly bypass. The traffic also coming from the north can choose to make a right and come into the site, or can keep going straight and make a right into a right in, right out driveway onto the Mount Holly bypass. Once it's on the site, cars can come in, drive through the car parking lots, trucks, we go directly to the truck court. So once they're on site, cars and truck traffic will be kept.
So if I'm leaving and I want to go back to 38, how am I going to get out of there? And
So
how do you propose to do
is
that?
to turn right to the south. So you basically, cars or trucks would leave likely via this driveway and the right exit to Mount Holly bypass.
So that gets me back to the fence. Is that a gate that's going to, your description of the gate led me to believe it was sort of there only to be opened if there was an emergency. So did I misunderstand what you said?
I said it would have a Knox box so that if it was locked, if it was locked, then it would be unlocked.
Okay. And it's
The operation of the gate really depends, on the tenant once they're in the ditch.
And and I'm glad you said that, because common sense doesn't always rule, but I guess the easiest way to get out of there back to 38 is to go around the back of the building and make the right?
Agreed.
All right, because I'd like to see the traffic cut down as much on Marne Highway as possible. Because it's hard getting in there, but I'd even like if you're coming south on the bypass, to not turn right on Marne Highway if they could get in the back. I
Which
don't
would
know
be
how we can
logical,
do
'cause
that.
if you come in south on the bypass, come straight, make a right turn, you're in. You'd have to make a right then a left, so why would you make two movements over?
Right, well, hopefully it's easier for a truck to maneuver, and they'll learn the easiest way real fast after the first visit, right?
Just for the sake of clarity too, if this is a 24/7 operation, that gate would presumably be open during the entire operation, so there wouldn't be any closure of it limiting cars and trucks from going out to the right and right out. I think that gate would only be closed in the event of, say, a 12-hour operation for security purposes, but then traffic's not an issue.
So this is a 24/7 operation, or?
Well, I think as Mike testified, they don't know yet, but based on historical experience, it could be up to a 24/7 operation.
Okay, well,
I believe you
I-
mentioned that there would be little to no overnight traffic.
Mike, if you can ask,
Yeah, because this is speculative nature, I can't say definitively what the end use is going to be, so to be very clear about that. But in our experience, especially for a building of this size, which is significantly smaller than the other project we've done in town, we would not expect heavy overnight car or truck traffic. But that's an expectation, not a guarantee.
okay, well, I have another question then. So there are a couple houses on Marne Highway. I mean, there's more than a couple, but in that picture there, there's 3, right? Or 4 houses, am I seeing there? Across from where your property is, correct? So those houses, I know at least 1, maybe 2 even, have children that live in those houses. And the children that live in those houses do not get busing to the high school because they're like 1.9 miles and 2 miles is what's needed for them to get bused to the high school. So they have to walk across the bypass. My concern is now you're going to add however many trucks, throughout the day, and I'm sure you don't know what time they are or anything else. So I would propose that you make some kind of arrangement with the school district even, that they would provide busing for those kids that live there. And if you can't get any further with that, then I would also propose that sidewalks be installed on that side of the street as well, so that it gives them a little bit more buffer from the traffic and the truck traffic that will be there with the warehouse.
sidewalks, I'm sorry, just for sidewalks on the opposite side of Marne Highway?
Correct.
This is Marne Highway, I think, as you know, is a county highway, so we've been in discussions with the county and expect to be on the December county planning board agenda. So in review of this with the county, we've incorporated the comments that they've had here. I can't condition our approval on a discussion with an outside agency that we don't really control. We'd be happy to look into safety measures, whether that's a crosswalk to our sidewalk, but absent that, I really can't, guarantee anything.
What we can, though, do is, should the board grant the approval tonight, the application, we can agree to express your concerns and any other concerns of the board to the county planning board. And we can do that in advance of their meeting in December, so they can take that under advisement. But again, it's county jurisdiction, so we have a limitation here on what we can agree upon. But we can certainly convey your question and concern to the county planning board engineer.
Were there sidewalks in the plan? I can't tell by looking at the small version I had.
So yeah,
From Marne Highway to the bypass and...
Yes, from our western lot line along our frontage to the bypass to the south.
And then, but not along the bypass.
Not along the bypass.
Okay. And I don't know, does that, Would your sidewalk tie into any existing sidewalks? I don't remember whether there's a sidewalk in front of the church.
Yeah, I don't believe there's a sidewalk in front of the church, no. Our sidewalk would tie into the existing pedestrian crossings.
Right.
At the intersection of Martin.
Right, it's going to be about a 5-foot sidewalk or a 6-foot sidewalk?
Yeah, I believe as a condition of the affordable housing on the church site, sidewalks along that frontage
Right.
were requested and approved. So that would start to make a sidewalk connection in that area.
Right, at least, and down, eventually down to St. Paul's maybe, who knows?
But currently, there's no sidewalks there.
Currently, there's no sidewalks, right?
So, I have a question. So you said the main entrance is that entrance there on Warren Highway? You consider that to be the main entrance? And that seems to be sending a signal that most of the traffic is going to come in off of Warren Highway, both coming from off the bypass, as they could come in off the bypass, or when they're coming this way, or coming up Warren Highway. So it seems like almost forcing most of the traffic to be on Warren Highway. I don't know, it seems to be the area that would be able to withstand less of the traffic than that entrance off of Mount Holly bypass. And is there a way to kind of force feed more traffic to go the other direction?
To advance that, would the applicant agree to a condition, and I know you always can't control outside trucking, but to notify the tenants drivers and to provide some notice that any traffic coming from the bypass heading south or anything leaving the site heading south from the bypass to utilize, provided there's a single tenant, to encourage them to utilize that Mount Holly bypass exchange. We understand that if you have 2 tenants, you may have fencing down the middle of your rear truck court, but that would sort of, at least try to minimize or maximize the traffic that uses the other.
So a couple points. Not sure who said it, but someone said the truckers will find the most efficient route, and they will always find the most efficient route. So I do think there will be, I think Richard's right, that is our main entrance, but I actually think traffic will be pretty evenly dispersed between the two, given the ease of the bypass access point. We're fine with operational direction and signage for any traffic that's leaving the site that wants to head south to use the bypass. The problem with traffic that's heading to the site, heading south from the bypass using that, is that the truck moving around a building like this really wants to be counterclockwise and not clockwise. If it's a single tenant and a low impact trucking use, which it very well could be, that might not be an issue because they're going to have plenty turnaround room once they're within the truck court if there's not already a number of trucks either on dock positions or in trailer parking spots. But if it's a tenant who's utilizing most of that space, the trucker really wants to come in counterclockwise so that he can back into a dock position looking over his left shoulder. So it's actually a very important functional use of a building like this. So I guess long-winded way of saying we would be happy, especially for traffic leaving the site, heading south, to provide that direction to the tenant and even provide signage that would make sense to comply with that. And we certainly can encourage traffic entering the site to use the bypass, but have a little bit more reservation in anything stronger than encouraging for traffic entering the site.
That helps reduce as much as possible.
I know you've done traffic studies, but I got a real concern with trucks coming down Marne Highway and turning left into your facility, and trucks exiting your facility onto Marne Highway making either right-hand turns or left-hand turns. That's only a 2-lane road.
And that's why we're providing widening along our frontage, so that it's not a 2-lane.
That's great for one's turning in, but not so much for turning out. And that they're heading.
I think you'll find that traffic leaving on Martin Highway or frontage, it helps either direction. We're essentially adding a lane. So, I mean, at the intersection, it's a 5-lane road. And you're right, when you get to the other end of our property, it's going down to 2 lanes, but we're making it 4 lanes for most of our frontage, just at the end, as it goes down to 2.
So you have a turn lane, if you're coming from bypass to get into the building. So you're going south on Martin Highway from bypass. You have a decel turn lane that you're adding.
Agreed.
And then you're also adding an acceleration lane on the other curve, right?
Well, we're adding 1 lane, and there is already a hatch here for the left turn lane at the intersection. So we're using that hatched area to make it a left turn lane into our site. And yes, this darker grey colour illustrates the widening that's occurring on our site so that we can make the maneuver safe.
Right, so you have a decel lane going north, and then going south, you have both the turn lane and the acceleration lane.
Agreed.
So at that point, the road is 4 lanes wide.
Agreed.
But
And is that-
still, you can't get into the building until it's a 2-lane road, or into the facility until it's a 2-lane road. It's right by the bottom basin, bottom left-hand basin. Is it 2 lanes at that point?
The existing road here is 2 lanes.
Yeah, and you're putting it a little,
Widens out, there's an existing striped safety area, and then it makes striped.
And we should clarify, I don't think we expect any truck traffic from Marne Highway making a right into the building. That would just be car traffic.
So just so everybody kind of understands, so if I'm going to park my trailer against the building, and I have to come in from Marne Highway, make a left, and back up so I can look out my window and back my truck. But on the other hand, if I'm parking below, on the bottom, and then this is what's kind of confusing, I'm going to need to come in the other way so I can look out my window when I park on the bottom, right? Out of my driver's window.
Or they're pulling, they've unloaded, they're pulling out of a dock position to head back to the Marne Highway and then pulling in that way. But yes, you're generally correct in your statement.
And when I'm leaving, I can just leave and go out and make the right on the Marne Highway, pretty much. But the irony is, they're probably not going to be going that way. They're going to be going back to the turnpike. So they're going to really want to come out of the facility and get back on Marne Highway and go the other way. I mean,
You're right, except for the fact, I think I talked about this the last time I was before this board, 295 in this area is an important highway because it's toll-free.
going south on 295.
If you're going south, I would anticipate you'd go outright, take 38 to pick up 295 that way. But you're right, if you're going north, your movement would want to be north on the bypass.
This isn't like there's 100 trucks going in and out of here a day. I mean, this is not really.
do you have any anticipation of the amount of traffic, since you don't know who's going to be the tenants?
Well, they're traffic engineers here.
We do have our traffic engineer here that can answer any of those questions. I would propose that we finish Richard's testimony on the civil engineering, and then we can bring up our traffic engineer.
Certainly.
And we do have renderings of what this building is going to look like from both Marne Highway and the bypass as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of others for the engineer. The roof drainage all goes into one of those or all of those retention basins?
So there are the 5 surface retention basins you can see. There's also underground detention basins under the paved surfaces, and the roof drainage goes into the underground.
Under the tanks underneath?
Yep, and then into the ground. We've done 2 rounds of testing on the site to verify the durability of the soil.
And that's going to be under the parking area, under the trailer park?
Under the truck court and under this parking parallel to the alley back.
Okay. And is there, do those storage tanks provide an overflow safety valve?
Yeah. So they're sized for the 100-year storm, and the stormwater rules require that we do peak reductions. So the peak runoff rates are less than the 210 100-year storm. We comply with all of that. Only if the design didn't work in some way field, in that overflow condition, would be discharged, in which case they would discharge, same as runoff leaves the site today, to the Kenji drainage system in the bypass.
Do those underground storage tanks require periodic maintenance?
They do. We have a maintenance plan that's part of our application that's being submitted to the town, and there's a maintenance obligation which the town can fulfill if we do not fulfill.
This may seem silly, but I don't think it is personally.
I'm having a hard time hearing the applicant because there's some talking going on in the back. Everybody will have a chance for comment. I just wish I could hear a little better. Thanks.
On the soundproof wall, which, we'll talk about, I guess, is there somebody from the soundproof company here?
We can bring somebody up from the, we have our acoustical expert, but not from the actual sound wall company.
Sound wall company, but the acoustical expert. So on the wall, it has nothing to do with acoustics, it has to do with appearance. What I'm concerned about is that walls like that always draw graffiti. They always draw graffiti. And so...
Not in Hainesport.
In any place.
No,
any place.
He's raising a good point, because they had to redo part of the wall of that other
No,
warehouse.
I'm with them, I'm only...
In any place. And so I would want to make sure that the material used is resistant to the best extent possible to that sort of problem. And then some guarantees from the landlord that should that happen, that it will be cleaned up, eliminated, painted over, whatever it is, right away.
Did that fall in our property maintenance ordinance, Kathy, anywhere?
That's not my job.
Code enforcement.
No?
That doesn't fall under zoning.
No.
Code enforcement.
Big, huge blank walls are like the artist's canvas,
Will these not be
So,
buffered?
if I may, on this, our wall, the graffiti's not going to be seen because we've got, as I'll get to landscaping at some point, we actually have quite a lot of planting in front of the wall. So the big blank canvas will exist behind a curtain of evergreen and deciduous landscaping.
And what about on the wall between your property and the church property?
So there's even more landscaping on that side. So yeah, I mean, this although the letter describes it as lightly landscaped, we're planting really as much as we feel we reasonably can. We certainly offer to cooperate with Mr. Taylor on some of his suggested tree substitutions, and I think one of the requests is we consider some additional trees in limited locations, which again, we're willing to cooperate with them on. But we have, a significant landscape buffer on the wall.
Well, that landscape buffer is great, and that's wonderful, and I'm glad you do it, but it probably still doesn't hurt to have the graffiti.
Absolutely.
The applicant would agree as a condition of approval to remove any graffiti in accordance with code requirements. And again, this is a Class A facility. They're going to be institutional investors here. The last thing they want to have on their product is graffiti. So it would be removed in accordance with any applicable code requirements. But again, I think it's unlikely we'll have graffiti because I think the point of graffiti is to be seen, and it would be shielded by the landscaping. But your point is very well taken.
I hope you're right.
But the point is well taken, and the applicant would agree as a condition of approval to remove any graffiti on the sound wall.
Right. And when the traffic engineer gets up here, he can think about this while we're waiting for him. I didn't see any road signage, and by that I mean arrows directing, one way or go out this way. You see streets sometimes with the arrows going each way and the yellow line. Is that because it's not contemplated, or not thought to be necessary, or is that something that would assist in the traffic flow that Gus was talking about and some of the other members were talking about earlier?
So the intent is these roads are all two-way. So we could add arrows going in both directions, but it would just be additional information.
So they're two-way, they're all two-way roads, okay.
Correct.
I have a question, and I'm looking at the bypass, okay, on the east side of the property, and I'm just looking at the one lane going south to 38. I can picture, because I've been on that road and I've been on other roads, and probably everybody in the room has, I can picture two 18-wheelers, you know, riding next to each other down the bypass. But you mentioned before that if they're coming south, they could turn in off the bypass at that part that's closest to your, yes. And likewise, trucks will be encouraged to go out that way to go south. I don't see that service road, or whatever you want to call it, that's right there by your right hand. That's wide enough to handle two 18-wheelers coming, one coming in, one going out?
This road
Right,
here
yeah.
is 30 feet wide.
30?
Yeah, so it's wide.
Okay. How wide would the bypass two lanes be? Isn't it bigger than that?
No, I think it's, I don't know, I think it's two 13-foot lanes, so it'd be 26 or 28.
Okay. I mean, just sitting here looking at the thing they don't look like,
Doesn't look wide enough, but
it's not the same
Sharp
size.
turn there.
pretty wide.
Make that
We
turn.
model all these turns, you know, there's software that allows us to model the turns. And actually, the first time we did it, didn't work, but I know it did work because I had the same thought as you did. And we changed the geometry slightly. There's a signal pole at the railroad crossing that is being maintained, and that's kind of why the road jogs left before right to help the swing of the truck, so that as it comes onto the bypass, it doesn't obscure traffic coming in. And remember, trucks coming southbound and making a right in, there is a shoulder here on our frontage already, so that's a fairly straightforward maneuver.
Okay.
And you're putting if I can see, the darker pavement suggests a decel lane off the bypass?
We're extending it slightly on our property to the edge of the existing pavement, yes.
Just one comment with respect to the county road improvements, the widening, the decel and XL lanes. This was all done in conjunction with, I'll call it pre-application meetings with the county planning board engineer. And it's been my experience that the county planning board for any major site plan application on a county roadway does now require a traffic management plan, so that if the geometry, if the traffic doesn't match up with the traffic study, the developer, the property owner, has that traffic management plan that the county planning board can put into effect for additional improvements.
That brings up my other question that I had. You mentioned in your cover letter that there was a traffic study for this, and I couldn't find it. And does anybody have a traffic study? I know there's a traffic study for the other property that we're not getting into tonight, but that's not the same.
Yeah, there's a traffic study, yeah.
We did submit a
I
traffic
believe
study.
we have a study.
We did submit a traffic study with our application, both to the
Okay.
township and to the
That
county.
was like, yeah, it was too much. Yeah,
Does anybody on the board remember getting a traffic study?
no. I have it in the office.
So it's just one?
You have a traffic engineer here.
Correct.
Okay, well, we'll get that later.
Okay.
Okay, so a couple of things, just want to clarify. We talked about the trash. So there's a trash compactor that will be attached to the building, and it's a sealed attachment to the building so that any trash doesn't get to be outside. Outside storage doesn't really work well for these buildings because of the wildlife and trash to be all over the place. As Mike testified to, the recyclables will be inside the building. So I think it's a great solution. It's a solution that's commonplace in these buildings. I think it's the right solution. As I mentioned, I think before, our design is in accordance with the current state and local noise regulations. The other couple things I want to cover are the signage. So we have, because it's speculative, we've illustrated the typical signs, and those are in compliance with the redevelopment plan. There may be future signs that would need to be in compliance, or they wouldn't be built, or there'd be some of these sorts which we back at the table. The entrance plaza here is a large concrete area. That's where we have a bike rack We also anticipate potentially having a couple picnic tables or such out there just for employees. With respect to site lighting, I think Mr. Judd did a great job of summarising in his letter. It is LED, energy efficient, full cut-off, and 3000 Kelvin. 3000 Kelvin means the warmer orange light, not so visibly obtrusive. And the full cut-off picture means that it's shining down on the site, lighting the site rather than lighting the sky. And we will have house-side shields to protect from glare, for the residents across the street. With respect to the landscaping, we would agree to all of Mr. Taylor's comments. There's one I would maybe take not this exception to. There's a 12-inch wide gravel strip around the perimeter of the building. The gravel strip is essentially to prevent moisture and rodents or plants getting into the building. Just provides a clean barrier between inside and outside. So we have to keep that rather than do additional planting. I think that's really it. The one thing I will mention that I've talked to Mr. Miller about, the engineer, is we've done 2 rounds of testing on site with respect to the stormwater. The stormwater design that was submitted originally was based on the first round of testing only. Now done the second round, and it should be approved. We'll give Mr. Miller an updated report that takes into account the second round of testing and shows the design still works in compliance with the state and the town's stormwater management regulations. I think that covers.
For the general public viewers of this who don't have the benefit of a close look at these plans, about how far back is the facade from Marne Highway? And I know that it varies on the bypass, but what's that smallest distance?
Sure, I can give you the exact setbacks rather than just about it.
Sure.
So the front yard setback off of Marne Highway is 109 feet. Off the bypass is 75.1 feet. The requirement is 175.
Right, the 75 is the smallest distance, right?
75 is tight corner.
Right.
Here, obviously, as you go further south, it gets significantly larger.
And how do you treat the basins? Are they're fenced on the plan?
The basins are not fenced, and there's guide rails where there's road or paved road next to the basin, but they're gradual slopes of landscaping, and then there'll be sand in the bottom of the basins to allow for the infiltration.
Oh, okay. All right. Are you the fellow we talked to about the architecture issues or not?
I am not.
Okay.
So I know there's been a lot of questions regarding traffic. What I would propose is that our traffic engineer come up next and answer questions about traffic, and some of the road improvements, and then we would shift gears to our architect to go through the floor plans and, more importantly, the renderings, so you can see what the building would look like from different vantage points.
Good.
And actually, would it be okay if I just, there were a couple of points, Mr. Burrow went through a majority of the comments in our report. I just wanted to maybe clarify a couple while he's still up, and that might hopefully make things move a little quicker. We had a comment about knowing that we have some residents across the street. Would you guys be agreeable to a condition that the trash pickups would happen between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m.?
Would, just for uniformity with the overnight standards set by the state, would 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. be acceptable? And it's not that I have an issue with 7 p.m., it's just timing for private haulers, but I mean, I guess we are, in reviewing that comment, we were looking to tie it to something that was an existing standard that is nighttime operations for the building as it relates to noise, and tie trash pickup to that.
I would defer to the board. We were just trying to avoid the 3 a.m., 4 a.m. pickups, which can.
So what would trash pickup would be emptying of the compactor? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's just back, is that thing on wheels or something? The compactor?
It's.
How does it get
It
removed?
goes on, the truck will come in, put that new compactor, the old compactor on its back and then drive on.
It's like a roll-off container.
So it's a roll-off.
essentially, That slides in.
We don't have a bunch of doors slamming and all that kind of stuff, right? I mean, is it making a lot of noise?
There's some noise, but it's not.
Not crazy.
Would it be two-stage? Take one out, put one back in?
He has to drop it
Yeah.
first, the new one, then pick up the old one and drop that one again and put the new one, like a regular container, right, you're saying?
Yeah, and look, I don't have any issue with 7 to 7. It's more, now we have to bifurcate for the tenant. Here's the overnight hours, here are the trash collecting hours, but we can certainly do that.
You're not asking to have trash removed at 3 o'clock in the morning, is it?
3 in the morning, there.
Correct? That was.
No, yeah, sorry. I was more of an operational, just to set overnight hours for the tenant as we talk about the gate being closed and trash pickup and having some uniformity, but we don't have an issue with 7 to 7. Okay. So.
We also had a suggestion that if it is not a 24-hour operation, can the lighting levels be reduced overnight to security levels to minimize the impacts? Again, understanding that it may be 24-hour, but if for some reason we get a tenant in there that's not, for energy savings and to minimize impacts, can there be a reduction to security level overnight?
I'm going to defer to my lighting expert as to how difficult that might be to execute.
So I do it on my building, and the programming they have now makes it very, very simple, and it's going to save you a ton of money if you don't have a 24-hour operation.
I'll trust you. Okay.
I think that was probably it for a majority of the sort of engineer comments. And I guess what I was hearing on the sound wall was the 10-foot sound wall on that southern bottom property line is for the church receptor. And the applicant is agreeing to a condition if in fact the residential use is approved, funded, and developed on the adjacent site, you would increase the length and height of the wall as necessary to meet the standards.
Correct. So the applicant has an affirmative ongoing obligation to meet all applicable NJDEP sound requirements, both the daytime and nighttime maximal decibel levels. And the applicant has been in discussions with the township. I've had several conversations with the township solicitor, John Gillespie, and I can state here for a fact that in the redevelopment agreement, there will be a specific provision regarding the future extension of the sound wall should the residential development that received use variance and preliminary site plan approval come to fruition and it gets built. We're not in a position now to build that sound wall because we don't know the ultimate design of the building. There's very specific requirements in terms of that receiver, where the windows are, the height of the building, the setback, et cetera. But again, if that gets built and there's a sound issue, the applicant must build that sound wall under DEP requirements. And if it doesn't, there's a complaint that's filed, the county board of health becomes involved, and you're violating DEP regulations. But again, to protect the township, I can state for a fact that there will be a provision in the redevelopment agreement.
And I think that's good. I think if a condition with some similar language could go so that those notes are on the plan, and in this resolution, there will be a termination date to the redevelopment agreement at some point. That way, 20, 30, 70 years from now, this set of plans, the resolution will have something in sort of memorializing that. And whatever that final agreement language is, maybe that can be looked in.
That's right. Or we could also, I think, to protect the township, we could have a standard note on the plans that the operations must comply with DEP requirements.
Right. Yeah. But I also want to, without having to come back to the board, because the board understands that it's only 10 feet high now and it's half of that property line. If for some reason that residential is constructed, the wall that you see constructed will need to get longer and will need to get higher. And this approval includes that if necessary, correct?
That is the goal, and I would just ask if the condition can read that it'll be consistent with what's agreed to in the redevelopment agreement, just so we don't have two sets of standards. And that might,
be somewhat open.
yeah,
The redevelopment agreement can set the timing.
that's fine.
I think we can take a 5-minute break before we get into the engineer.
And I think that was all I had. They did, and just for the board and the public, they did add a note to the plans confirming that there will be no outside storage or display of materials or products or merchandise or equipment, or any outdoor fabrication, assembly, or manufacturing. Anything is completely contained within the building. That goes on plan. That was all I have, Mr. Burrow.
Yeah. I have a comment having to do with the stormwater management. That the application would include a stormwater management plan that will have that will address the DEP requirements of forms for the maintenance of the drainage facility. In particular, the underground facilities. The underground facility is only going to work as well as it's maintained, because there's no fail-safe for the underground system. So it has to be meticulously maintained, or else it's going to eventually fail. And the part of that maintenance is this forms that DEP has prepared for routine maintenance that the township administrator has to submit to the town at least once a year, sometimes twice a year, depending on what's happening. So that the applicant and the owner will have to know that this thing is an ongoing process, and it'll have to be maintained all.
No, fully understand, and we would also agree pursuant to DEP requirements that stormwater maintenance and operation manual would be recorded with the county clerk's office, so it'd be in the chain of title, and it would burden any future property owners.
Okay. And let's see,
Build in New Jersey.
What happens is that in order to start this maintenance program, you have to fill out the whole form one time, so you have a base to start with the approval of the thing, with the yearly approval. And that first application and form fill out will have to be filled out before you get a temporary CO or a CO. That'll be a condition that you can't get that before that.
We understood and agree.
I have a question for you. It has nothing to do with the application. I think it might be a good idea to just take a 5-minute break before you continue, or anybody object to it, or?
No, we have no objection.
Pardon?
No objection.
Okay, let's just do a 5-minute break and then we'll get back into it, okay?
Hearing testimony from Richard Burrows. Our next witness is Alan Lothian. He's a licensed professional engineer with Lothian Engineering and Environmental Services.
Was he sworn? No, he was not sworn in.
He was not. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you give tonight will be the truthful truth, because you speak up here?
I do.
Can I get your name again, please?
Alan, A-L-A-N, Lothian, L-O-T-H-I-A-N.
Okay, thank you.
Now, just for the record, can you state your education, licenses, and experience in traffic engineering?
Okay. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering from Rutgers, a Master's of Science in Transportation from NJIT. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey in good standing. I've been with Langen Engineering as a traffic engineer for over 23 years now, and I've testified before multiple boards throughout the state. I'm not sure if I've been before this one before, but I've been before dozens throughout the state.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board? If not, acceptable, counsel, proceed.
Thank you. Alan, you've heard a lot of questions about truck traffic especially, and the routes the trucks are going to take. Can you, I guess, for the board, just summarize your traffic study and then go into a couple of statistics about truck traffic and the impact to both Martin Highway and the bypass?
Okay, so actually, I'll just hit the biggest question that I heard, which was how many trucks do we anticipate for this type of site, this type of warehouse, based on the Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation manual. We anticipate approximately 38 trucks per day, spread out during the course of the day, with the majority happening during the waking hours. Very minimal truck activity anticipated during the course of the night.
Is that 38 movements or?
That's 38 trucks.
38 trucks.
Anticipated. So that's, if you go over the course of, say you look at it over the course of a 10-hour day, that's four trucks an hour. When we're looking at movements, because that is the next thing that I was going to get to, when we look at the street peak hours, which is the 7 to 9 in the morning, 4 to 6 in the evening, we anticipate that there's going to be less than one truck trip in any one direction every 15 minutes on average. So that's 4 trucks and during the course of an hour in any one direction. And with the majority occurring to and from the north on the Mount Holly bypass. And with respect to truck circulation, any trucks that are destined to the south, it makes complete sense for them to leave the site from the Mount Holly bypass, right in, right out driveway. The thing about that driveway is, and why the Martin Highway driveway was identified as the primary access point, is because the Mount Holly bypass is just a right in, right out. You can't make lefts in, you can't make lefts out, so you're very limited on the direction you can go. The Martin Highway access point is a full access and will accommodate the majority of the passenger car traffic and also some of the truck traffic as well. We have been working with the county, as was described, on improvements to the area. We're widening along the frontage, as was described, to facilitate movements into and out of the site. The left turn lane along Martin Highway was important to the county, that we provide that to get vehicles off of that through lane and into the site, and we've provided that. It facilitates any of those trucks that may be coming south on the bypass, turning right and making a left into the site. Right now, again, working with the county, we've met all of their anticipated improvements that they've required along our frontages with respect to the decel lanes, the left turn lane in, and the sidewalk. And as Mr. Floyd mentioned, the county does implement a TDM, a Transportation Demand Management Action Plan, and if there is any major discrepancy between what is identified in the traffic impact study that they would approve, that the applicant may be subject to additional improvements associated with the increase in trips.
Did you talk to the county about whether any improvements were necessary at the Martin Highway bypass intersection?
No, we did analysis of that intersection. We did analysis of our 2 driveways and the bypass and Martin Highway intersection, and there's no significant increase in level of service or delay at that intersection during either of the peak hours associated with our traffic.
What was the date of the study that you did?
The study was done August 31st of this year.
This year.
Right, yeah.
And that's this traffic study that's in Mrs. Tiber's office?
You asked a question, you talked about truck traffic. What about the anticipated, how many employees do you expect would be at that location, and would they all be sort of working similar hours, coming in and out at the same time?
Well, to piggyback on Mr. Capola's, it's anticipated to be approximately 125 spread out over 2 to 3 shifts. And again, Going back to trip generation, which is what I deal with based on the IT trip generation, we're looking at, one additional trip every 4 minutes on average in any one direction, when you look at all the trips total. So that's 15 trips in any one direction, which is barely noticeable on the roadway.
Let me ask you about truck turning issues, because it came up. A couple of people had some questions about it. Truck, 18-wheeler, comes up bypass, enters in through bypass entrance to the site, comes down the 30-foot road down to the trailer parking area. And it seemed like that he would then be facing going in the wrong direction for the typical backup of a truck. He'd come down and to back into the building, be facing the wrong direction for the best backup arrangement. Am I right?
No, you're correct. You're correct. I'm just, yeah, you're correct, yes.
Yeah, so how does the trucker deal with that dilemma?
Any trucker that comes in that direction, they can make the turning movement. It's just easier and safer for them to be turning and looking over their left shoulder out the window.
So I guess, do you mark the spaces? And is it typical to mark the spaces, and then if a freight company's coming in, that they kind of know where what space the truck's supposed to go in? Is that common practice in these places?
Yeah, you'll notice on any new construction, the doors will have numbers on top of them. This particular facility, because it's so small, will not have a guard shack, but if you were going to a larger facility, usually the truck will check in with the guard shack, they'll be instructed where to go and go to that door. This will either be a truck that knows what position or what handful of positions it's supposed to go to for inbound, or they'll radio ahead or have some other type of communication to know
So I'll know where I'm going.
Yeah.
So if I was going to park at the bottom of the plan, the really best way, again, is to come in from Warren Highway. If I'm going to park against the building, the best way is, as we are all saying, to come in from, not Warren, from the bypass if I'm parking at the bottom. And if I'm parking at the building, I come in from Warren and make the left so I can see over my shoulder, at my door when I'm, so they're going to know where to go, right?
Yeah, yes.
So it takes care of half the, so.
But the other thing too, you mentioned earlier, trucks will find the easiest route. The other thing that an operator will typically do if they're what I'll describe as a low impact use to the site, and the trucks want to come in off of the bypass to avoid Marne Highway, is a lot of times what they'll do is leave this section of trailer parking vacant. We'll come in and do a turn so that they get faced the right way and then back in. That's not how we would design the building, not knowing who the tenant might be, but that's operationally what could happen.
So the bottom row of parking, is that typically because there's going to be no room at the warehouse? I'm going to come in and sort of drop my truck, and maybe your yard jockey's going to move it to the door, or how does that typically take place in these warehouses?
Yeah, no, so it's usually, those are typically empty trailers, so it will have unloaded in the warehouse, not be ready for a load, and will go to a trailer parking stall overnight, typically 24, maybe 48 hours before it'll come back to the facility. Again, totally dependent on operations.
Right.
Some of these you drive by and you'll see very sparse, few trailers. It just has to do with the tenant.
They're generally the empty ones, you're saying?
Yes.
So they would generally in these kind of buildings, they would generally pull up to a door.
Yes.
To start getting unloaded. Okay. I never really realized.
They are all registered vehicles and not storage containers, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, it's interesting. Okay.
Are there any other traffic questions for Alan?
It's not.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you.
Can I just ask one question? Are you making any assumptions that the majority of the traffic is going to be coming, given that truck drivers avoid toll roads if they can, most of the traffic will be coming off 295, coming up 38, coming down the bypass, and therefore using Marne Highway as their entrance point?
Yeah, we have approximately 25% coming from the south and west, which would be 38 out to 295, and 75% coming to and from the north, which you have access to 295 as well as the turnpike.
Yeah.
So 75% by your
Would be,
estimate
would be using
comes
the...
along the bypass
Yeah, south on the bypass.
Okay.
and would likely turn in off the bypass entrance.
A portion will turn off the bypass entrance, and we estimated that approximately 50%, 50/50 split for a conservative analysis. Because we wanted to, for analysis purposes, if we showed all making the right turn from the bypass, there's no conflicting points. We show half of it going onto Martin Highway and turning left into the site. We show conflicting points, which, shows a conservative analysis.
Right, and that gets back, I guess, to the suggestion that was made earlier that truckers be informed of the preference for using the bypass exit or the bypass entrance.
Yeah, to restate what
So that they don't have to make the double turn onto Marne and then into the...
we have no issue providing operational direction and signage for trucks exiting the site that are intending to go south, whether that be 295 or 295 ultimately to the turnpike, to use the bypass entrance. We can encourage truck movement heading to the site to use the bypass entrance, but any type of restriction or operational direction that would limit the access to Marne Highway, because, like I said, trucks will do what they can do to avoid any delays, but they really do want to be coming in off the Marne Highway side for the reasons we talked about with the counterclockwise movement to the building. So, sorry to be confusing, but to restate, completely fine with trucks exiting the site to use the bypass if they're heading south and providing signage and operational direction to an end user. And we certainly can encourage the use of the bypass for all truck traffic coming from the north.
And, I don't have buildings that big, but I'm about half. And there's an inordinate amount of familiarity that takes place with I'm just talking to the board that the same guys keep coming back. It's like surprising, like it's the same, there's strangers here and there, but when they start making deliveries, you see it's the same. It's always the same UPS guy. It's the same FedEx. It's the same. They almost have routes, so they will find the easiest way in and out, and time's money to them, and they don't want to back up one extra time if they don't have to. So I kind of agree with what you guys are saying with all that.
My suspicion is that most of the traffic that is exiting there will not go out onto the bypass and turn south towards 38. They'll probably want to come out on Marne Highway and go up the bypass so that they have access to the turnpike and 295.
Yeah.
Correct.
It depends which direction you're going, but yes, the majority will be making the movements that you just described.
I will make one point, not, again, speculative building, don't know the tenant, but given the size, it does lend itself to more of a local operation, which, as we all know, the population center actually then skews south and towards Philadelphia, towards the suburbs. So I agree with your statement, but there is a chance that this ends up being a little bit more southern focused because of that.
Any other questions? Otherwise, we have our architect as our next witness.
Okay.
Zach?
I'm Zach Wester again. Start with Exhibit A.
This is Exhibit A40, conceptual floor plan. Zach, if you could just briefly walk us through Exhibit A4 and what the board members are looking at.
Exhibit A4 is the building floor plan with some of the site extents shown behind it. So the building is designed, as been stated previously, with 2 future office areas, and those ultimately will be designed when the tenant's needs are known, whether it's 1 or 2 tenants. The building is protected with an ESFR fire sprinkler system. There will be a fire pump in the pump room that's here down in the northwest corner. And there will be roof access to the building in the electrical room here, which will be secured. The mechanical units, I know there was a question about screens for mechanical units. We're intentional when those are designed to place them 1 bay in from the perimeter walls, so 60 feet on the west side and 45 feet from the east side as a minimum. And we use 3D modeling software to evaluate sightlines from adjacent roadways to ensure that the parapet wall will effectively screen those units from the adjacent roadways. We'll move to Exhibit A5, which are the building elevations.
So, excuse me, will that electrical that you're talking about will be for the entire building? Even if there's 2 tenants, it's not going to have separate?
That's correct.
Okay.
So Exhibit A5 are the overall building elevations. The building is constructed of load-bearing concrete wall panels, which will be painted in a neutral gray color scheme. And the glazing will be of a gray tint, and canopies will be clad in a metal panel, which will be a closer to a white color. The aluminum frames for the building around the windows will be a clear anodized aluminum, so they'll be like a silver color. The wall panels will have reveals along with the panel joints to break up the elevation and to provide rhythm down the building. We use color blocking strategically to break up the long elevation and bring the scale of the building down. And the entry elements, so at the corner, at the intersection, the entry element at the corner consists of a metal canopy that wraps around the corner and has a large expanse of glass over the entry doors to identify this entry as well. All of the elevations include clear story windows that run up high, let light into the warehouse space, and they're paired between an accent band of color that ties them all together around the building. The maximum panel height, so the tallest panel height from finished floor is 45 feet, which conforms to the allowable height, the allowable maximum allowable height, and the roof will drain the water to the perimeter of the walls and will be discharged via internal roof drains and then into the underground storage system as described in previous testimony.
We could put up simultaneously both Exhibits A6 and A7.
Yep.
So any air conditioning and then it's heating and stuff, would that be on the roof or on the ground?
That would be on the roof. All of that equipment would be ultimately on the roof.
And how much higher than the panels of that?
So the largest units may end up being exhaust fans and not necessarily the actual rooftop units. Go back to A4. It depends on a tenant's needs. So a lot of tenants won't air condition the warehouse space. They'll use, in most cases, or in a lot of cases, they'll use intake louvers, which we've shown on the elevations in sort of recommended locations. They'll use intake louvers to pull air in, and then they'll exhaust that air through the roof. But they will air condition and fully condition the office spaces. So For an office space of this size, it would be a fairly small unit that would serve just that space. But until the tenant's needs are known, we aren't sure of the mechanical design for the building. I can say that they likely are not, those exhaust fans are likely not more than between 6 and 7 feet tall for a building of this size. But should those units require additional screening based on how it's designed, that I think the applicant consider they would provide that additional screening. If that answers.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah. And I think I'll pull up the. So this is the view at the intersection of Martin Highway and the bypass.
I'm looking at that right now, it should be marked as exhibit A7.
A7, yes. Yeah, so this is the view from the intersection. You can see that we are providing some signage or an indication of signage for this particular tenant. On the elevations, there are 3 total wall signs indicated. The sign at this location is 120 square feet max, which complies with the redevelopment plan, along with the other 2 signs that are indicated. One on the north elevation facing Mount Holly Bypass, which is 250 square feet, and one on the east elevation that's 120 square feet as well. And the actual sign design will be submitted for approval when the tenant is brought on board, but at this time, no deviation from the ordinance has been requested. And I'll pull up exhibit
A6 that you're pulling up right now. We put A6 is from the Martin Highway.
Oh, A8. Or A. This was A8. This was A6.
We just went out of order.
Okay. So this will be exhibit. Yeah, so this is heading east on Martin Highway. As you can see, the flywall that was indicated in previous testimony. And that will be, again, constructed of a pre-engineered wall system that consists of panels that span between posts. And it will be stained in a color that is consistent with the color scheme of the building. So it will visually and aesthetically read that it belongs with the building and is consistent
So
with the
in the event of unfortunate graffiti, how does the graffiti get taken off? Does it get painted over, or is it able to get washed off the wall?
I think that would depend on the type of coating, but if it can't be cleaned by chemicals or any kind of solvent, then I imagine it would have to be repainted.
So the wall is painted, now you said stained, so I guess stain and paint are the same thing here?
And to confirm that they will provide details of all materials, colors, and illumination as a condition of approval prior to those signs being constructed.
Okay.
That way, we would get a chance to review them. If they request any signs that don't fully comply with the size, the ordinance sizes, or the number of signs permitted, they have to come back to the board for a variance.
But specifically in your letter on page 5, the requirement permitted is 5 feet, they're proposing 6, and that's on the bypass side, and another one is 10 feet and 11 feet proposed.
Your minimum, we're about to setback.
Yes.
It's the setback from the, so we have to be set back at least 5 feet, we're set back 6 feet. We have to be set back at least.
Okay, I read it backwards. Thank you. That's why we ask questions. Letter F, number 3. I guess we're not going to be getting testimony regarding proposed usage, and other than operation of the facility, it's going to be 24/7?
Mike, maybe you could provide some additional testimony about the potential types of tenants that might be here based on your experience.
So,
I pulled together a little list of similar size tenants that have occupied buildings in the Burlington County and surrounding areas. So I'm going to go by type. Automotive parts supply, Jaguar Land Rover, Max Finkelstein tires have taken buildings of similar size. Building materials, Lowe's Home Delivery has taken space in Mount Laurel of similar size. Floor and decor. Furniture and appliance, Wayfair is in a similar size space in Burlington. Ashley Furniture is another tenant that's in this market. Healthcare supply, Owens and Minor and Thermo Fisher are two tenants that are in this market of similar size. Packaging supply and storage, Veritiv is a box company and packaging supply company that's in Burlington in a similar size space. Retailers are also a big part of this market, Walmart, Burlington stores, TJX companies. They generally are in slightly larger spaces than this, but they do have a range of building types they use. And then third-party logistics providers, also generally in larger buildings than this, but do have kind of a range of space that they use. So while I can't provide a specific name for this use, that's the type of tenant, that's the range of uses I see for this. This is not a delivery station or anything with heavy van traffic or anything along those lines.
You would consider these all to be high-quality credit tenants?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just get you to repeat, just so we get it out there one more time, a little more clearly, what variances or changes to the zoning that you're basically not looking for any, but can we just get a little more testimony so we get everybody understand what you're entitled to do there and what you're doing?
Certainly. So the property is located in an area in need of redevelopment. A preliminary investigation was undertaken by the township planner, and the property was designated an area in need of redevelopment. Thereafter, the township worked on a redevelopment plan, which was adopted by the governing body. And that redevelopment plan is what governs this project and this application before the board this evening. And the project, this application before you this evening, is not requesting any bulk variances from any of the design criteria in the redevelopment plan. It complies with the maximum building height, the front, side, and rear yard setbacks, the maximum amount of impervious coverage. It meets the minimum required number of parking spaces, loading spaces, et cetera. So again, it's what I would typically call a by right site plan. We're not asking for any relief, whether it's a design exception or variance from the plan.
Okay, and then just some testimony that when this was done, you weren't in anybody's mind here in the township. This wasn't done specifically for your application.
The property was designated an area needed redevelopment.
Right.
There are very specific statutory criteria in order to have any property in any municipality designated an area in need of redevelopment, and I'll defer to Scott Taylor to discuss that.
Yeah.
The applicant is the redeveloper of the project, and the applicant needs to enter into a redevelopment agreement with the township, and that redevelopment agreement will spell out very specific obligations on the part of the redeveloper, also on the part of the township. So there has been negotiations back and forth with the township regarding the plan, regarding the agreement. One example of that is the sound wall in the rear of the property, where the township solicitor, Mr. Gillespie, has made it clear, and so has Mr. Taylor, that the redeveloper, Blue Water Property Group LLC, will have an affirmative obligation moving forward pursuant to the redevelopment agreement to extend or modify that sound wall should another receiver occur on the church property,
Understood.
namely the residential.
What I'm trying to get at, Scott, maybe you could offer some testimony that when the original redevelopment plan was developed at the outset, we didn't necessarily know they were coming.
We haven't known who the tenant was, so that, as Mr. Floyd indicated, the first step, and just one clarification, it was designated as an area in need of rehabilitation.
Right.
And at that time, there was just an analysis of the property itself to make sure that it met those statutory requirements. Once we got into the redevelopment plan phase, that's where some concept plans and architecture concepts were included in that redevelopment plan. But that initial step when the rehabilitation designation occurred, there was no specific proposal.
And there's other uses that were allowed on that,
Yes.
in that designation, other than your use.
Correct.
So I just I don't want to create the aura that this was done specifically for you folks. Property was designated in need of rehabilitation before we knew.
That is 100% correct. And again, my apologies. It is an area in need of rehabilitation, not
And you
redevelopment.
conform to, you obviously took a look at the property and the site and all the requirements of our rehabilitation requirements, and you fit into them, and I guess you proceeded to go down the road, and here you are, and you don't require any other changes to any zoning or anything else as you testified. So I want to make sure everybody understands this wasn't created just for you folks. I mean, there was other uses, and Scott, can you, I mean, I don't remember them all, but there was a lot of uses, other uses that maybe, I think apartments was one of them, and a lot of apartments was one of the things that could have happened here.
Yeah, there had been some discussion about the potential for apartments to happen. Excuse me. Also, when the redevelopment plan was developed, there could have been manufacturing or other uses in there that are different than what's currently proposed. But yeah, at the time of the rehab investigation designation, there was no specific proposal or user set forth.
And I can say there was some rumors about apartment developers out there that had interest in the site. I heard a number 400. I never saw it personally, but that's something we had to look at, and it, obviously has not come to fruition here.
Yeah. I think, just the last point, and again, address it to your client. What's the estimate, and I'm sure you have one, of the jobs created by this development?
Our estimate is 100 to 125 full-time employees.
Full-time employees, not counting the truckers that come and go?
Correct.
Just the people at the building?
Office workers, warehouse workers, yes.
And pilots?
There's not going to be any financial agreement or tax abatement with this project.
So let's get that out there. There's no, you're paying the full taxes on the building.
Normal ad valorem taxes. There will not be a financial agreement.
Right.
Mr. Taylor, going back to your letter, landscaping, you're comfortable with all of that?
We are, the applicant indicated they would agree to comply with all the comments in our report.
Like the irrigation system will be put in and everything else?
Correct.
And we are okay with that 12-inch wide gravel strip for that moisture separation. It really won't be visible from outside the site,
Okay.
which was commented
Could we switch to Mr. Miller, your letters and so
Okay,
forth?
just inform the board that the stormwater management plan is still in review, and it's subject to the county approval, which may alter the present stormwater management plan, but it looks like everything's going to be able to work out, depending on what's going on with the county.
Because I know there's a couple of parts in the response letter that there is no response, and I guess you're following up on all that with them?
Yeah, that's the report that they got to update.
Okay.
But they'll update that in conjunction with the county approval.
So any action we take, it's going to be subject to your approval of the stormwater management. Okay. All right, any other comments or questions from the board? And no more from the professionals? No? Okay, hearing none, I will open it to public comment. And if anybody who wants to talk about this application and this application only, just raise your hand, come forward to the podium, and face Mr. Kingsbury. He'll swear you in. State your name and address. You want a break? Okay.
right there?
All right. We're going to take another quick break. Sorry, okay? 2 minutes?
2 minutes at a
Good.
time.
Yeah, you can go right behind you. Okay. All right, sorry.
We're off the record.
Yes. Please don't address the applicant unless I specifically say so.
Sir, could you give me your name? Name?
Greg Derrickson?
Greg?
Derrickson, Derrickson.
You swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, whole truth, the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Go ahead. Address?
I live at 715 Marne Highway. When I bought my house 34 years ago, I got to see horses, and then I got to see trees, and now I'm going to see an eyesore. When you widen the highway, how are they going to widen the highway? Are they going to take their property, or are they going to take my side of the property? I can't address them because you told me not to.
I'm letting you speak. Is that, you only have that one?
No, I got a whole bunch more.
Okay, say your questions and then we'll have them answered.
How, is the building going to be 109 feet off the highway? Is that what they stated?
Off of Marne Highway, is that your
Correct.
question?
That building should be on 38 or somewhere on the bypass. It shouldn't have anything to do with Marne Highway. Marne Highway is a nightmare from 7 o'clock in the morning to 9:30. And then at night from 4 o'clock to 6:30. There's traffic like you wouldn't believe.
Okay, I believe they already testified, and correct me if I'm wrong, you said it was 100 feet off of Marne Highway to the front of the building, right? And that's what your plan shows, too.
It's 109 feet from the lot line. The lot line is actually just behind the proposed sidewalk.
The what line?
The lot line.
The lot line.
So from the...
109 feet inside our property line, the road is obviously outside our property. So it's more than, I think your question is from the edge of the road, it's more than 109 feet.
When you widen the road, are you taking your property, or are you going to take the other side of Marne Highway?
When we widen the road, all the widening is into our property.
So my road, my entrance is not going to change.
Correct.
Just the eyesight and the noise and the light, I'm going to have to see all night long.
What you see will change.
You're directly across the street from...
I'm the closest house there.
Okay.
I'm 35 feet off the highway. My house was built in 1923. I got plaster walls. It's all redone inside. When they crack, I will file a lawsuit against them.
Okay. What's your next question or comment?
I know Bob Shin made money. These gentlemen are going to make money. Me and my neighbors are going to lose their butt when we try to sell our house because nobody's going to want to look at that and move in next to that. I just want to thank you guys. Oh, anybody here born and raised in Hainesport? Not a single one. I was born and raised in this town. I was chief of fire company in this town. My father was the chief of fire company in this town. I want to thank you. Evidently, you guys all probably live in the developments, don't you?
Any other? Yes, ma'am.
Give your name, please.
Hi, Noel Skadinsky. It's N-O-E.
First name?
Noel, N-O-E-L.
Okay.
Last name is S-K-O-D-Z-I-N-S-K-I.
Skavinsky?
Skadinsky.
Right hand, please. Swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So forgive me if you know some of this that I don't, but is there a tenant confirmed to move into this building?
There is not.
So it could potentially be an empty warehouse. A number of people have told me that there's already a lot of empty warehouse space in the area. So I guess my question is there a good chance that this could remain an empty warehouse? And then the landscaping come to disrepair, the graffiti would not be taken care of. So that is a concern of mine. My property backs up directly to Greg's property. So that's just one of my concerns, so I don't know if that's been discussed or talked about.
Yeah, we've asked and talked about it, and they've testified several times. The building is put up on spec, which is speculation.
Right.
That they're going to build it. It's the takeoff on that movie years ago. If you build it, they will come.
Right.
That's what they're hoping for. It's a valid question, and with all due respect to how they're doing it, we have to respect their business acumen, that they're not just throwing millions of dollars into a warehouse and going to leave it empty.
Okay.
But the other one's already occupied. These are the folks that built the other warehouse by Lowe's, and that's
Right.
already rented. And the public could get an idea of what this is gonna look like. Much smaller than the other one, but the quality of what these folks did. So we kind of know these people, and we're kind of happy that they do everything they say they're going to do.
Correct,
When
okay.
they say they're going to put a tree up, they put it up. We don't have to fight with them and argue with them.
Thank you. Okay. Just regarding I know there was a traffic study done, but one of the things, as Greg mentioned, the traffic on Marne Highway, so I'm on Deacon Highway, so I pull out either left or right onto Marne Highway, and it is quite a wait most times of day, including in the evening. And there are a number of deer that cross Marne Highway. I'm not sure if any of you are aware of that. There are a lot of deer in the area. It's already very risky. So I don't know if that has been taken into account in a traffic survey, the increased risk that brings with the number of trucks that will be coming through the area, with deer running in front of cars, with that number of increased amount of traffic with the trucks. Just seems an additional safety risk to the people who live in the immediate area, and there are quite a few. So I don't know if that's something that can be explored, or perhaps the traffic expert could comment on that. But it's certainly a concern of mine, especially when I am on Marne Highway and have to turn left onto Deacon Road, and I have to wait and sit there. The risk of trucks coming behind me is already a little bit intimidating, but knowing the situation with the deer is just all that more, it's just causing a little bit of fear for me to drive to my home.
He said 38 trips a day on working hours. That's what, I have no reason to disbelieve him. 38 trucks a day.
Big increase from what we have currently, and it's a lot of traffic.
How many was that, Mr. Traffic Man? How
I
many?
believe he said 4.
How many trips an hour did you say 38?
During the peak hour, it's 4 in any one direction.
4.
And it's to and from the west on Marne Highway, we don't anticipate any during the peak hour.
When you, in your traffic study, just curious, it's just, this lady, do we know how many trucks are going up and down Marne Highway anyway? Were you able to look at that, or is that something you don't concern yourself with?
No, when we did our traffic counts, we did account for truck percentages on any of the approaches to the intersection of Mount Holly Bypass and Marne Highway.
So how many do you think go up and down Marne Highway now?
Just give me 1 second. Eastbound, approximately 20 in the morning and 22 in the evening.
And that's an hour?
That's in an hour.
So you're gonna do 4?
Coming in any one direction. So yeah, coming out, it would be 4.
I mean, I've never, I think you're low, and I've never said that to a traffic guy. I think there's more than 20 an hour on Marne Highway coming down. You're pretty
That's
sure?
going eastbound on.
Oh, one way?
Yeah, that's one way.
Okay.
Eastbound on Martin Highway.
Yeah. Okay, so you're not gonna add, you're only adding a tiny bit to what goes on there now.
Yeah, fraction, yes.
Did you do a level of service grade for that intersection, Marne Highway and Buckeye?
Overall, it's a level service C, with all movements operating level service D or better. And that's the same in the existing no-build and build with our development as well.
So the level of service doesn't change?
Yeah, unfortunately, all the trucks and all the cars want to avoid the lights on 38, so we've turned Marne Highway into a little 38, as everybody knows. And I don't know what we can do about it, but it's
Understood.
it's busy.
Yes.
38, Marne Highway's busy.
It is, and I guess the concern for residents there is that this is increasing it, and 4 is not a small percentage of 20.
And we're sensitive to that, but it's a de minimis increase, less, in our opinion, I'm not a traffic man, but less than apartments would have been. I've asked that question many times.
Okay.
I'm not an expert, but that's what I was told, and it kind of makes sense. 200 or 300 units, you know, versus 38 trucks a day, you know. So we looked at that when we were listening to these folks when they first came in. So yes, Marne Highway's busy. It's busy.
Okay. Thank you. And I know everyone is anxious to get out of here. I just have a couple more quick questions. I'm curious why the area, which is a beautiful piece of property, was for redevelopment in the first place. Is that not the place for this kind of question?
Well, I'm going to speak, they have a right to develop, we can't stop them.
Right.
And legally, it doesn't look like we'd have a case if, I don't want to comment on the application, but these people come in, they have a right to buy property. If somebody wants to sell it, somebody wants to buy it, they have a right. They have a right to develop it, and it's not necessarily up to municipalities to deny them that right. We can sway things in a little tiny bit of a direction, but we can't stop some of this that's going on. I mean, people think you can, but you can't, you really, and I don't want to comment on this but people in general have a right to buy property and put up houses. You saw them going by the diner, and you have, you know, stuff going on. I mean, we were lucky in Hainesport that nobody knew we were here. More going on now than in the 20-something years I've been around. It's unbelievable. It's just they found us, you know.
I think one of the other things, though, too, just to kind of, you know, I didn't understand all of this before I joined the board, and I've been on the board like about 5 years now, I think. But one of the things is if a property is zoned commercial, we can't just automatically take it and say, we want it to be open space now. And we can't take it and say, well, we just want to put apartments on it, or we just want to put a big mansion on it and be done with it, it's only one person. The board, we don't have that authority to do that. So if something is already zoned a certain way, we can't just change it, you know? So that's something that I would encourage people anywhere, that when you're going to buy property, look around. I mean, like this gentleman had said, you know, he's been there for 34 years, and he's looked across and he's seen horses and he's seen fields. But if it's zoned a certain way, then at any time it could change. And that's just, you know, the way that the laws work.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not like we're trying to do it just to, you know, make all the residents upset or
no,
you know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I get it, because I wouldn't want to look at it either, but I mean, kind of our hands are tied in a way because it's already zoned that way.
Okay. I understand. I do appreciate that explanation, though. It's helpful.
Typically, when a town needs tax revenue or you know, they go to their commercial rate, but we didn't, and they offer incentives to people to come and build these. We didn't offer these people any incentive to do this. They have the right, you know, to do what they're doing based on the law that's happening here, you know.
I understand.
Not to be a dead horse, I just wanted to, because I've had this conversation with a bunch of other people too. you know, the only way to stop a particular piece of land from being developed is if you buy it.
Right.
You know, whoever owns that property is the one that's got the right, and it might sit there for decades, but eventually that person's going to want to turn that investment into something, and it's, we could only manage it through the process, but we can't say, the only other way would be to declare it green space, but nobody's got, you need tax dollars to be able to buy up property to make them green space, so.
Okay, thank you.
And I think you've heard from what's taken place here tonight. We just don't automatically, notwithstanding the legal aspect of it, we just don't roll over and play dead. We hire a planner and we hire an engineer to make sure we get the best looking property when we're, quote, forced into something. I don't mean that disrespectfully, but there's some things we can control, but there are some we can't.
Okay.
But I appreciate your comments.
Yeah. And then I just have two logistical questions regarding, there was some discussion regarding the lights and the lighting, and I was trying to follow along. I don't know if this was addressed, but how tall the lights are going to be, how many they're going to be, is, like, I'm just concerned about light pollution. There's been talk of the sound, and I have a question on that also. So I don't know if that's a factor, anything that can be considered there. One of the reasons we bought our property was because it is pitch black at night. It's wonderful. There are woods behind our house, and obviously another concern for the residents that all live right there is going to be the light pollution.
And that Mr. Miller has addressed that and is working with them, but if you would like some, Counselor, you want to have your client give some
I'm
clarification?
sorry, I did miss when that was mentioned, then I was
don't
trying
worry.
to keep up.
Yeah.
You
Mr. Snow.
you don't have to apologize, okay?
No, you're being very, all your questions are very good, and we want to answer them.
And I can answer a couple of those. I think the applicant's going to get you some numbers on the actual height of the fixtures. One of the things as we went through and did our review that they've agreed with is they've agreed to keep the lighting to really the minimum necessary to have safe circulation on the site. They did agree to a condition that if it is not a 24-hour operation, they would reduce the levels of lighting to security levels only. Again, in response to the neighbors in the area to try to minimize those impacts. As we identified in our report, we recommended that house side shields be placed on all of the fixtures. All of the fixtures are already what's known as a full cutoff light. If you see the old Cobra heads or even like Acorn fixtures, the bulb sits down below and the light shines sideways and gets very glary. The fixtures they're proposing are more like a shoebox fixture where the light fixture is set up in there, so the light is only distributed down. There are no floodlights or spotlights that go sideways. One of the other things we did, and I think it was mentioned by one of the board members, there are different color temperatures of light. You've been in parking lots probably where they have that really old, nasty, dark orange light. And then you've seen some car dealerships that have that super bluish white. It's almost like an operating room, like a seizure bluish white. We've gotten them to reduce that to something that's almost like an incandescent fixture. So it's got a warmth to it and it has less negative impacts on wildlife and also on neighbors in the area and even workers within that facility. So they're in that 3,000 to 3,500 degrees Kelvin is the color of that light fixture. And the applicants agreed to keep that down. The plans already reflect that.
But Scott, don't we have either an ordinance or a design standard that prohibits light from the site to, in effect, bleed out into neighbors?
Yes.
If I recall being
And
around.
a lot of this was written into the redevelopment plan. Also, their lighting plan itself, there is no actual light trespass that will be leaving their property onto any other adjacent residential properties. So all of their lights will be directed down onto their site. Sometimes at the intersections of the roadways, a little bit of light will flow out just for good circulation access, but there won't actually be any light coming across Marne onto any of the private properties.
Okay. Thank you for that. That's very helpful. And my last question is just regarding construction. Are there, requirements that are set for the construction period as far as what hours they can operate and be building and all of that, and how long that might take?
Mrs. Newcomb can answer your question.
Why is
She's,
everyone looking here? They are allowed to start at 7 a.m. Technically, they can go until 10 p.m., but I will tell you, I've worked with these on the other building, and they have been very considerate of everyone, and they don't even have neighbors over there. Plus, they'll be going into, if this were to get approved, they're still going to be in dark time, so to say, at least until spring. So if they get approved and they were to start site work within the next months, nobody's going to be working at 4 or 5 o'clock if you pitch dark. But they are allowed to start at 7 a.m. That is our allowance.
And there's no restrictions for noise or anything? I guess there's nothing you can do, there's no sound wall that can be put up before they start to build it?
Go until afterwards,
Right.
correct.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you. I do appreciate your time. Not thrilled about this, but understand the situation, so.
thank you for your comments. Anybody else? Public comment? Anybody online have comment?
We do have 10 people online. There are 10 people online.
10. Okay.
I don't see anybody unmuting themselves for comment.
They know now's the time for public comment?
I'm assuming they can hear us.
Okay. All right, any other public comment? Hearing none, I will close public comment.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we grant, I guess it's preliminary and final we're looking for here. Is that right, Bob?
Yes.
And no variance. Continue the, obviously, the unaddressed items, that everything is, all the approvals are met with stormwater, and Scott's comments and continuing anticipated cooperation with our planner.
Correct.
That's my motion.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and second. Any questions from the board members on the motion? Roll call, please.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Mayor Gilmore?
Yes.
Mr. Bradley?
Yes.
Mrs. Baggio? Yeah, yes. Mrs. Tyndall?
Yes.
Ms. Costco?
Yes.
And Mr. Krollpfeiffer?
Yes.
Members of the board, thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Good luck with your project. Now, we have two other cases, case 2105 and case 2105A. And, excuse me, 2105A is not going to be handled tonight. It's going to be moved to December 1st, right?
Yeah, we need to,
I need a motion and a second on
Yes.
that, but we're going to hear 2105.
correct.
Okay.
We're going to hear
So-
the minor subdivision.
Yes. So I need a motion and a second to postpone 2105A to the December 1st meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Okay? Have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any questions on the motion? You're getting there.
Just the same dude?
Roll call, please.
Do you want to make it clear that what's happening is this is being postponed until the December 1st meeting at 7 PM, that you do not have to give any further notice, that this is the only notice that they'll be on the next
Yes.
meeting?
Correct.
Okay. Mayor Gilmore?
Yes.
Ms. Costco?
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Mr. Bradley?
Yes.
Mrs. Baggio?
Yes.
Mrs. Tyndall?
Yes.
and Mr. Pfeiffer.
Yes. Okay. Counselor Floyd. Minor subdivision 21-5.
Right, this is my actual.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Michael Floyd. I'm an attorney with Archer and Griner, appearing on behalf of the applicant BTC 3 Hainesport Logistics Center LLC, which has submitted an application for minor subdivision approval for property located along Route 38. As you just mentioned, there's a corresponding application for site plan approval for an industrial development that's being continued until December 1st. However, the subdivision before you this evening will be creating new lots to help effectuate the industrial development, as well as Nissan car dealership expansion, as well as a new lot for a cell phone, existing cell phone tower. But with me this evening, we have two witnesses. Sorry, I'll ask them to come up and introduce themselves.
Oh, this is where they come.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time. I'm Joe Fierro.
Hold on just one second. I just want to have you sworn in first by a counselor, both.
Raise your hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, names, please.
Joe Fierro, F-I-E-R-R-O.
Joseph Romano, R-O-M-A-N-O.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, so just to introduce myself, I'm Assistant Vice President of Development for the Black Creek Group. I'll be the project lead for this development. Just some information on Black Creek. We're a real estate investment management firm focusing on owning, operating, and development of industrial real estate with a track record of over 25 years. Nationally, Black Creek has completed roughly 30 million square feet of industrial development, and in New Jersey alone, we have completed 6 million square feet.
Thank you, Joe. I just wanted to make sure that the board knew that Joe is here on behalf of Black Creek. But I think really our testimony this evening is going to be with Mr. Romano talking about the subdivision plan. We are in receipt of the review letters for both the subdivision plan and the site plan, but we'll be addressing all the site plan comments at the December 1st public hearing. And with us this evening, we have two exhibits that we'll be presenting. Exhibit A1 is an aerial photograph of the property, and then Exhibit A2 is the subdivision plan that was submitted with this application. But if there's no objections, what I'd like to do is to turn it over to Joe Romano. But first, Joe, if you can state for the record your licenses, education, and experience.
Sure. I'm a principal at Langen Engineering, and I oversee the firm's surveying and mapping services. I've been at Langen for 40 years, licensed land surveyor in multiple states, including New Jersey. I've testified in front of many boards across the state, although I've not had the honor of being in Hainesport before.
Any board comments or questions? If not, Counselor is acceptable.
And Mike, maybe if I can, just for a second, and for the board and the public, as the board knows, this is the property that is overall the Nissan dealerships, the Atlantic Wood, the old Creosote facility, the Hesser parcel. These are parcels that were studied last year, determined to be an area in need of redevelopment, and a redevelopment plan was set forth and adopted, referred to this board, and adopted by the governing body. So the uses and the design will be heard at the site plan. That'll be part of the next hearing. What's here tonight is really just a change of lot lines to allow for that site plan to actually be heard. The subdivision was contemplated in the redevelopment plan. The lot sizes do comply with the provisions set forth of the redevelopment plan. But I just kind of wanted to give a little background to the public and the board on where we were and what got us here today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. And again, we are proposing 3 lots, but Joe, maybe with Exhibit A1, which is the aerial photograph of the property, can you just orient the board members to the surrounding uses and the property boundary?
Sure. So the property is consistent of 5 lots today, and as planner stated, the property is consistent with the redevelopment zone. We have the Conrail property, we'll say to the north or to the top. The Mount Holly bypass to the east, to the right. Route 38 to the south, and residential lots to the west. The Nissan dealership sits here, and the wood, industrial and Atlantic Wood Industry sits to the north of the Joe Campbell here. So it consists of 5 lots today, and we're going to put that back 3 lots.
Thank you, Joe. And if we could switch to Exhibit A2, and this is the subdivision plan that was submitted with our application.
Again, the subdivision plan is in compliance with all state statutes for following a subdivision map. And it shows the boundary of the existing lots and the proposed lots and any necessary easements that are to facilitate the development of this project.
Thank you, Joe. And if you could just highlight the lot where the industrial will be and also the cell phone lot, and then the remainder lot for the Nissan dealership.
Sure. So the larger lot, which is 40-some acres, is and this is the majority of the property. The cell phone tower exists, and that stays in the smaller lot. And the Nissan dealership lot is here, which is now transect or traversed by this access easement, which will be relocated to facilitate this lot to be one developable parcel.
Thank you, Joe. And just to add a little bit of additional color to Joe's testimony, it may be difficult to see on your plan, as he just referenced, there is an existing driveway that comes in that bisects the Nissan dealership. It's about a 45-degree angle, which is not very good from a public health, welfare, and safety perspective for any type of project. And that is the driveway that benefits the rear property, the Atlantic Woods property. So we do have an, permit application pending before NJDOT to remove a couple of the driveways, including the angular driveway here, and create a new driveway to benefit the rear of the property. We'll go into more details regarding that with the site plan application, but I thought it'd be helpful to understand this subdivision, why we're proposing it as shown. We are also in receipt of Alimo's October 28th review letter for the subdivision. There was a question in item number 1 regarding easements. There are some certain easements on the property. We anticipate that those will be extinguished as a condition of site plan approval. It's also pursuant to the redevelopment plan, and this property is located in the Route 38 Mount Holly bypass redevelopment plan, and it does conform with all the Vulcan area criteria.
What, just on the easement issue, besides the, what I'll call the diagonal road easement that goes through the Nissan property, that's right, yeah, that, what other easements are being affected?
Well, just for the sake of clarity, if you're correct me if I'm wrong, the driveway that bisects the Nissan dealership is not an easement. That is the driveway that is connected to the rear property.
Correct.
It's a modest shape like a pickaxe.
Okay.
It's easier to see it here. So existing lot 42.
So I guess, yeah, I guess actually the easement ran to Nissan to drive across. It wasn't, the road itself wasn't the easement.
Yeah, I think we had a deal concocted a long time ago where they were allowed to ferry cars across that driveway, remember?
Yeah.
There is also a 20-foot wide PSE&G easement in that same space.
Which will stay, or?
I believe that's a utility easement and it will stay.
Does that run down the existing
Runs down
driveway?
the rear of this lot, of lot 2.
So
What is that?
What's in there?
Provide electrical to the, and gas back to the creosote plant?
I'm not sure of its use, but I believe so.
So I think for the purposes of the subdivision application, there were two, I'll call it easement or encroachment issues that were raised in Scott Taylor's review letter and, and Marty Miller's review letter. One on existing lot 5.01, which is not part of this application. There's an encroaching driveway and an encroaching shed on the applicant's property. So we were asked to provide testimony regarding those two encroachments, and the applicant will be reaching out to that property owner to discuss the encroaching shed and driveway.
Where is that relative to what was?
It's in this lot here,
Oh, it's back at the other,
residential joiner.
right,
So it doesn't have any material impact on the subdivision here. It continues to be a by right subdivision, but as a condition of approval, the applicant would agree to reach out to that property owner to figure out a solution to those encroaching site improvements. There was all...
And they will be resolved as a condition of the site plan approval.
Correct.
Which will be a condition of this subdivision approval.
Correct, correct. There was also a question regarding access to the existing car storage area on lot 2.02. Joe, if you could point out where lot 2.02 is? Lot 2.02 is not part of this application, but there is an existing easement in place, typically referred to as the Durga easement. And as a condition of the redevelopment plan and of the redevelopment agreement, the applicant needs to resolve that easement issue in terms of access and the parking of tractor trailers. So again, they would agree to do that as a condition of site plan approval, and they're also required to do it as a matter of law pursuant to the redevelopment agreement. The last comment I wanted to make was regarding the existing jug handle along Route 38. Part of our application to NJDOT involves improvements to the Route 38 frontage, including a new jug handle and the abandonment of the existing jug handle.
looks like you're going to do a reverse jug handle.
Correct. And that permit is pending right now with DOT, but we have not received our permit yet. But as a condition of approval, we would agree to amend the subdivision plan or come in with a new subdivision plan to show that parcel that will ultimately be conveyed to NJDOT for the new jug handle improvements.
And if I'm reading this correctly, the new jug handle would also provide direct access to one of the warehouses.
Correct.
All of the warehouses, I guess, but it would come in right next to one of them.
Correct. And again, I think it's helpful, these were questions raised in the review letters.
Right.
So I wanted to make sure we're full transparency talking about it, but we will have much more detailed testimony and exhibits during the site plan application.
Good.
And that, again, on staying with that jug handle and Mr. McKay's comments, that's the jug handle that'll allow vehicles westbound on 38 to turn onto Lawrence Boulevard to get down to the other warehouse.
That is correct.
Just went in recently.
That is correct.
And I think this is just speculation on my part. Somebody realized a little too late that that other jug handle was not adequate to handle 18-wheelers going into the new warehouse. Because I think you can only put about 3 or 4 in there. Now we'd be able to put twice as much at least.
Well, we've had our pre-application meeting with NJDOT. The full application was submitted. All the property owners have consented to the filing of that application. And all I can tell you is that we are working diligently with DOT to get that permit issued as quickly as possible, because it does involve a land swap with DOT.
Right.
These are state-owned lands. Ultimately, we'll have to go before the State House Commission, which meets 4 times a year, to effectuate that land swap. But we can't even get to the appraisal portion and that transaction until the actual engineering and the design has been signed off on. So just for the board's purposes, we are pushing forward as quickly as possible with that, but it is a lengthy process.
And, just one question, maybe you said this and I missed it. I remember we had the issue with the Nissan dealership not being able to move cars from that back lot where they park vehicles across this road over to the main. Is this going to clear that up?
The short answer is yes, and that will be made clear during the site plan application. This subdivision is also going to help to allow a land swap to occur between the Nissan dealership and the applicant this evening.
Okay.
And there will be, I do not represent, just for the record, I do not represent the Nissan dealership or Seagull Holdings. They're represented by Stephen Eisner, but I know that he has or will be submitting an application for site plan approval for the dealership and the new access points coming in. So this subdivision application and the corresponding site plan applications They're intended to, I hate to use the word, but to clean up the overall site operations and also to allow for the remediation of the Atlantic Wood site. But that's our affirmative presentation this evening. We can certainly answer any questions by the board's professionals, but this is a by right subdivision, taking 5 lots to create 3 lots, one for the cell phone tower, one for future industrial development, and one for the Nissan dealership. It will involve a swap of land between Nissan and the applicant, and in the future with DOT for the improved jug handle off of 38.
Mr. Taylor, you have any comments? I know that there's been correspondence back and forth, and all of your requests have been met. Mr.
As it relates, subdivisions like this are mainly sort of an engineering and surveying effort. All of the lots do comply with the required sizes as set forth in the redevelopment plan. The rest of our comments will really be handled in conjunction with the site plan application.
Okay. Mr. Miller?
This plan is a consolidation plan in order to address the future site plan, and so we don't have a problem with that.
Okay. And it is complying with the redevelopment plan that was put forth, and
Yes.
okay.
It
Mrs.
is with the condition that the disposition of all easements get resolved as part of the site plan application. And that will be, because that is a requirement of the redevelopment plan. So I think it would be appropriate to have that as a condition of the subdivision, for that to be addressed during the site plan.
Okay.
And we're fine with that. And sorry, Mr. Chairman, one thing I neglected to mention, this is a minor subdivision plan, so the applicant has the ability to perfect the subdivision by the filing, the recording of a deed of subdivision. The applicant may elect to perfect it by the filing of a plat. So I know we had previously spoken about the need for a deed of subdivision, but they may elect on their own accord to file with a plat.
Okay. Mrs. Newcomb, any? No? Mrs. Tindall?
Can you just repeat what you said with the easement stuff? There's 3 of them, right? Am I looking at, well, I mean, kind of like one, like Nissan and PSE&G, right?
So there,
And then one on the other side there?
if you look at their Alta survey, there are a myriad of easements that exist all over this
Oh, there's a
property.
lot. Okay.
There will also be proposed easements that will need to be presented as part of the site plan application.
Okay.
This lot line readjustment, in my opinion, does not change because there are no physical changes to what's happening on the land out there. So I think because the redevelopment plan says all subdivision and/or site plan applications shall resolve the easements, I think it's safe now to make a condition of the subdivision that all of the easements will be addressed in conjunction with the site plan application.
Okay. Thank you.
As short as I can say.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I understood what you said.
What about this letter here? I wasn't sure I understood from the Durga, representing the Durga Corporation, which it looks to me like it's technically not, it's really Lumberton, I guess, at that point.
And that is really the issue that we're talking about here tonight. That is one of those easements and one of those issues that will need to get resolved and discussed and resolved as part of the site plan application.
I can state for the record, I did receive a call yesterday from Jonas Singer, who represents Mr. Durga. I provided him with a copy of the site plan application that's before you on December 1st, and we are in receipt of his letter. So again, we will address the disposition of all easements in connection with the site plan hearing.
And that's, just to repeat, it's the Durga Corporation?
Correct.
The Travel Inn that's next door?
That's correct.
Okay. While on that subject, is there anything else we have to do with regards to this letter other than, is Mr. Singer on the line? Okay, well, we'll get the public comment, we'll get him in. Okay.
Board comment?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. Any board comments?
So I just wanted to say something. So we're kind of glossing over what's really going on here. This is a classic example of cleaning up a big messy site that we could have gotten stuck with. Somehow the applicants finding the way financially to mitigate, I'm not going to say how much, maybe it's none of our, but it's a lot of money. I mean, in the many figures of creosote and chemicals that are in that property. That is a dirty site. It's now going to go on tax rolls. Scott, Paula, John, and I know Marty have done an amazing job of getting all these property owners to get together and really propose a nice site. If there's a spot in town for warehouses of this type, which is what's going to happen here, I mean, I hope I'm not spilling the beans, this is the spot right here. So I'm real happy that that's probably one of the biggest things to happen in Hainesport ever. So this is a really good site. We have a Nissan dealer, as has been alluded to, is looking to improve that site, and we're just they're moving some property lines around, and they've really done a great job, and I'm looking forward to seeing this, this thing get going. So it's a good job of combining all these properties and making this work.
Thank you, sir. Any other board comments, questions? If not, I'll open it to public comments. Anybody on this application only, please step forward, sir.
Or just a compliment.
Well, just come on up here. You have to,
Charles Bloom, B-L-O-O-M, 204 Angleside Avenue.
What's your first name?
Charles?
Charles?
Yes.
B-L-O-O-M?
Correct.
Charles, do you swear or affirm the testimony you give tonight?
excuse me,
Whole truth,
the other hand.
truth?
All right, that's all people do on the left hand.
You got it.
I do.
Okay.
So I'd like to thank you for letting me know not to waste my time to come here December 1st, because it obviously means that the warehouse is going up. That's pretty much all I have for you guys.
Mr. Bloom?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, have a nice night. This has nothing to do with a warehouse, just for the record, this application. Any other public comment? Okay, there is some public
Yeah,
comment
Mr. Singer
online.
just unmuted himself.
Yeah, good evening, members of the board. Jonas Singer, appearing on behalf of the neighbor that you mentioned. Mr. Floyd and I spoke a few times. I'm sure we can, make an effort to resolve my client's issues. And I'm sure I'll report back before the next meeting that hopefully we've taken care of the issues that my client has. Is that an attorney?
Yes, it's Jonas Singer.
Oh, okay.
For Durgas Corporation. Is that sufficient? Could you hear him?
Pardon me?
Did you hear what he said? It wasn't going through the speaker, it was just going through the...
He's
Okay.
representing Durgar, which is the travel in and...
Correct.
Okay, what's your comment, Mr. Singer?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I just indicated that I've spoken to the applicant's attorney a few times, and I hope that he and I can resolve our issues with respect to the easement and the request of my client to deal with access to a site off of the proposed roadway to the rear of the applicant's property, as well as some drainage issues that we're concerned about. So unfortunately, I haven't had time to review the actual plans. Council did provide to me today a digital copy of the site plan. So he and I will continue our discussions with the anticipation that we should be able to resolve our issues. If not, we'll present them to the board for their consideration.
Okay, and I think it's, my last name is Kroll Pfeiffer, the chairman.
of the Joint Land Use Board, it's been stipulated that any approval with this regards to this application is subject to resolving all the easements, and this is one of them, right?
Yes, resolving how these easements are going to be addressed, either in terms of modifications, extinguishment, abandonment, et cetera. And the Durga easement is one of those easements, and it is provided for in the redevelopment plan that we have to address it.
Okay, and then all of that will come up December 1st?
Correct.
Okay. Is it, Mr. Singer, that clear?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I understand.
Okay. Anything else?
Not for me, not for me.
Okay, thank you, Counselor.
Thank you.
Okay, any other public comments online there? No? Okay, if not, I close the public comments. What's the board's pleasure? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. No, I did public comment. I thought you...
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the end of public comment on this application. There's another public comment that comes at the end of all the business, okay? For any comments about anything. Okay, sorry. What action does the board wish to take on this application?
What do we need to do? Approve the
We need to approve
subdivision?
the subdivision.
Yes.
Well, then I'll move to approve the subdivision, however many lots, but the 3 lots we need to do.
Okay, and it's subject to satisfaction of all the easements and the
Yes.
points raised by
Make sure you get all those easements cleared up.
Taylor Design and Align, right?
Yes, that.
All right, I'll second
What
that
he
one.
said.
Okay, any questions on the motion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Tyndall?
Yes.
Mr. Kroll-Pfeiffer?
Yes.
Mayor Gilmore?
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Mr. Bradley?
Yes.
Mrs. Baggio?
Yes.
And Ms. Costo?
Yes.
Thank you for your time this evening, and we'll see you next month.
Yes, thank you. Okay, we have the,
Minutes.
we have the minutes of the October 6th meeting. Need a motion and a second to approve them.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as written.
Okay, Mr. Bradley. Mrs. Baggio, you said yes?
Yes.
Second. Any questions on the motion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Bradley?
That's why he...
Yes.
Mrs. Baggio?
Yes.
Mayor Gilmore?
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Ms. Costo?
Yes.
And Mr. Kroll-Pfeiffer?
Yes. We have one resolution, which is the matter we approved last month. Resolution 21-18, this was the variance for the front yard.
Motion we approve, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I have a second?
So, second.
Okay. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mrs. Baggio?
Yes.
Mr. Bradley?
Yes.
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Mayor Gilmore?
Yes.
Ms. Costo?
Yes.
And Mr. Kroll-Pfeiffer?
Yes. Okay, we only have one item of correspondence, which is attached to in your package from Burlington County Soil Conservation. Just need a motion to accept and file the correspondence, which I'll make.
I'll second.
Okay, any questions on the motion? Roll call, please.
I'm sorry, who motioned?
I motioned.
And who seconded that?
I did.
Okay, Mr. Kroll-Pfeiffer?
Yes.
Mrs. Tyndall?
Yes.
Mayor Gilmore?
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Mr. Bradley?
Yes.
Mrs. Baggio?
Yes.
And Ms. Costo?
Yes.
And can we amend the agenda to include the executive minutes from October 6th? Forgot to add that onto the agenda.
Oh, okay. I didn't think that had to be
Yes.
It does, okay. Because it was, in confidence, but now we're going to make it public.
No, no, it won't. It stays separate.
Oh, okay, all right.
That's why you have it
I'll
separate
make the
from the other.
motion, we include the executive session, what, minutes?
Amend the agenda.
To amend the agenda.
Or whatever.
I'll second that.
I'll make whatever it is.
Are we approving the minutes at the same time?
So you're going to make that a separate
Yeah, you
motion?
have to do it separate.
Separate, yeah. So you're making a motion to include
the
this in the
agenda. To amend
minutes?
the
Correct.
Not to amend the agenda.
Amend the agenda.
Amend the
All day,
agenda, okay.
second.
Right.
All right.
You have to take a vote?
We have a motion.
We have a motion and we have a second.
I'll second.
No, she seconded.
Oh, you did.
All in
Oh, you
favor?
should do it all in favor?
Yeah, do it
All in favor?
We're all getting nuts right now.
Aye.
There we go.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the executive minutes. I'll second.
Okay, any questions on that motion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Badgia?
Yes.
Mayor Gilmore?
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Ms. Costco?
Yes.
Mr. Profile?
Yes.
And Mr. Bradley?
Yes.
Get everybody?
Okay, we are now at professional comments. Professionals, no?
Additional comments?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
No additional comments?
Mrs. Newcomb? All right, board comments. That's B-O-A-R-D, not B-O.
American,
Any?
more than American.
I have a couple of comments. Want to welcome Mrs. Newcomb back. I'm glad she's back with us. And Mrs. Tiber, this will be a surprise, I didn't mention it before, but you did a great job putting these packages together for us. I don't know how you figure it out. Thank you.
Hearing me.
And everybody have a nice Thanksgiving, and we'll see you December 1st, the next meeting. Any public comments?
No, George ain't talking.
There are
No?
2 people online.
Online public comments about anything affecting the Joint Land Use Board?
So it's very hard.
I clarified it.
No comment.
Okay. Motion for adjournment?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye.
The Chinese.
Have a nice Thanksgiving.
Watch. Now, Chinese